Friendship, for example, is a real gift.
It's an insane world. In it there is one sanity, the loyalty of old friends.
You're the best friends anybody ever had.
Lone bad friend, good.
Bubba was my best good friend. I had to make sure that he was okay.
Friendship and family, these are the things that matter.
Can we just become best friends? Yep.
Touch my friends again and I'll blind you. Thanks, Mike. You're my best friend here.
Lose one friend, lose all friends, lose yourself.
We ride together, we die together. Bad boys for life.
That's what friends are for, right?
Friends? Louis, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
If you're not over here in 15 minutes, you can find a new best friend. You've been saying that since the 5th grade.
Welcome to the I Am Your Friend podcast. I'm your host, Aiden Licker, and we're still sponsored by nobody right now, but it's coming. We're very close. Our guest today is our friend Dave. Do you like Dave or David?
Either's fine. You know, some people can only call me Dave, and some people can only call me David.
Yeah, I feel like David is very adult, but I've known you
as Dave.
Right, since I was probably like 4 or 5 years old. I've always known you as Dave, yeah. But I feel like a very distinguished version of you is David.
Yeah,
know?
I don't know. Some people...
How do you introduce yourself to people if you meet new people now?
I introduce myself as David.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say that you prefer David.
Yeah, because when I say Dave, I think that's my father.
Right.
My father's Dave.
There it is. The classic line. Well, Dave is my father.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. Anyway, our guest today is our friend David. As mentioned, David and I have known each other for a very long time. We grew up in South Buffalo and went to South Buffalo Catholic School, which was the worst.
Drama.
Yeah. I only went there for 3 years. I was only there from 2nd grade to 5th grade before I went to public school. Yeah.
Wow.
But then we both went to the
West,
same
right?
public school. Yeah. I went
Okay,
to high
yeah.
school. Yeah. Which you were a few years older than me, but we were both there.
Yeah.
Which was better. It was an improvement above Catholic school, but it's still...
No, I loved West.
Oh, did
actually.
you really?
Yeah.
Good. You know what's funny is I feel like there's this notion of people not if you're cool now, it's expected that you're supposed to hate high school. And I'm I didn't hate it was fine.
No, I actually loved high school. I mean, I did quite well for myself and I was very involved and teachers were great. And my grade specifically, well, mine and Liam's, there wasn't a whole ton of drama.
Same.
And even the teachers pointed that out in high school. They're like, you know what? This is weird, but we like almost all of you.
Yeah.
Even the ones who were troublemakers, they're like, we still like them.
I think there was a weird era of people that existed.
Yeah. That
were in high school between I don't know, when did you start high school? 2005?
2006.
Yeah, so I would say somewhere between because even my brother Danny, maybe a little bit after him, because he graduated in 2006. So, but somewhere in there, and to when maybe a few classes after I graduated, I feel like that era of people were just a non-dramatic folk.
It was a decent group of people.
Yeah, or maybe just in our time. I mean, West Seneca, what I think is always interesting about West Seneca, and I'm always hyping West Seneca up, there's nothing amazing about it, but there's nothing terrible about it either. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a decent place.
It is a very decent place, which is a good thing to have, Yeah. It's I don't know, people are up in arms because of the, not up in arms, but people criticize that, that West Seneca police Twitter account. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
Right. And it's two younger guys that are just making memes and it's funny. But you have people that are ACAB about it and shit on it, which I generally side with those people, but it's just dude, West Seneca, you can't hate West Seneca cops. There's nothing happening here. Yeah. You know what I mean?
I mean, I also will say that I did go to a budget hearing to oppose the increase in the police budget.
Sure, I agree with that. What do we need it for? Nothing happens here.
They that's because they actually cut peer counseling.
I was there. I was at that hearing.
Yeah.
Actually, I forgot that. I didn't know that's why they cut it.
Well, it's not why, but it informed the politics or the decision or the resistance about it.
Yeah.
Because they were you know what? The town doesn't have enough money to support these 2 teachers.
Right.
To help kids learn anti-bullying, drug and alcohol information and education, and life skills. They're you know what, we don't have a place for life skills, but we can increase our police budget by $1.8 million. Or no,
Is that
It was
how
like
much it was?
8. It was something insane. It was
Yeah.
like there's an 8 in it, and I know it was million. I don't know if it was
Right.
8 million, but it was something insane.
Yeah.
Where like the budget just went way up, like millions, and then we were like, what for?
Yeah.
And they were.
I was
like,
at that hearing. I was a freshman, but I was because I
Yeah.
had joined peer counseling, and it was a good time.
It was
I
a
liked
great.
it.
It was a great time, and it was a
Yeah.
great program, and it was necessary. And then they called it a duplication of services, and
Because of what? What's the duplication?
so they thought that police and Dare did the same thing.
Oh, right.
And we were like, actually, we
have research
we
data
have
that shows
research
the opposite.
That says
Yeah.
the opposite. So what now? And they were like, well, what now is we made the decision. You have to deal with it.
Yeah.
So that was really interesting. That was a really pivotal moment in my life.
Yeah, that was kind of I forgot that happened because I was 14. It was like fall 2009, which would have been your senior year, but it was my freshman year, and
Yeah.
I remember being involved in peer counseling, and it was fun. And I liked it. So if anybody that doesn't know, peer counseling was this program within the West Seneca School District where high schoolers would be part of it, and you would go to like the middle school and elementary school to talk. I said elementary, real weird there, but just let it go. And to talk to kids about like peer, trying to avoid peer pressure and stop them from doing drugs. And
so it was always this is a critical part of it. It was because we never said like don't,
right,
because it was purely informational and like in the point where it's like these are the effects of things.
Yeah.
And this is where it takes some people.
Right.
Worst case scenario, this is what could happen. And the focus was on that, but it was also on education because the director of it was always like, I know kids are going to drink. Yeah. I know you're going to go, or even if you wait.
It was realistic. Yeah.
It was very realistic. And, but I just wanted to like jump in with that.
Yeah.
It was
Good call. Good call.
Yeah.
Because that was the thing, because I did always kind of feel like a hypocrite. In there, you know what I mean? Because like I was drinking, I was smoking weed, whatever, which you definitely weren't supposed to be part of it.
Yeah,
but
this is the poor don't listen.
Yeah.
So,
but it was like I liked the idea of it, especially because like I was a kid who got bullied, like not hardcore. I shouldn't say that. I wasn't like getting beat up or anything, but I was harassed pretty hard.
Yeah.
In like middle school. So to come into high school as a what did you just say?
I said by me.
No.
No, I did. I used to harass you all the time.
Did you?
You were just like, you were.
Yeah, but that was like
target.
friendly fire. You know?
Yeah,
what I mean?
of course. No, not like severe bullying.
Yeah, no, I was actually like, there were kids who like would actually like fuck with me and like make my day terrible. You know what I mean?
That's not good.
Like you guys were like, oh, it's Liam's brother, lock his locker or something, and I was like, you guys, that was different. There was one time when Bob Santiago literally put me in a headlock and just carried me down the hall when I was a freshman, and Brinker was like, Santiago, put the freshman down. And Bob was like, no, it's fine. He's my little brother. And he looked at me. He's like, are you all right? I'm like, I'm cool. And he's like, all right, carry on. And I'm just in a headlock and Bob's just carrying me on in the hallway.
There you go.
But anyway, but the whole thing was then, my freshman year when I joined that, which is weird because like if I didn't have that, I don't know, because like I didn't have like a ton of friends going into like I had my group, but going into high school it was cool because like I had my brother and his friends, like you guys that were all seniors, and you guys were in peer counseling, so I was like, oh, okay, I'm gonna do this just to like be part of something and a way to like make friends and stuff. And then they like tried to cut it out of the budget that year, and then I remember we all went to that town meeting, which is crazy to think about that. Like as a 14-year-old, I was in like a town, like an actual like being part of like government, local government kind of stuff, which makes sense that I turned out the way that I did. But
and I think that is also like something that's really cool is like the whole concept of politics and like especially local government. You should be involved. Like it's your whole life. Like it's like you said, that was a place not just for what it did on paper, but also what it provided is a sense of community and connection. And that was also our defense against it too, because that's why Liam and I joined.
Right.
We were like, we don't want to sit alone in the lunchroom because we feel like losers.
Yeah.
So, and my sister was also in it, and she was older. But we went and we were like, can we sit in here for lunch? And then we joined, and we were 4-year peer counselors. And it was a huge pivotal thing in our lives.
Yeah, totally.
Like
that's crazy.
That has informed so much in my life. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. That is nuts to think about. I totally forgot peer counseling was even a thing, and it was not something I expected us to talk about. Right? Especially like right off the bat, it was like, yep, this happened. So that's cool. That unlocked a good memory in my head.
It is. It was, and like I said, more informative than I expected it to be. Yeah. Just because of the way it was taught, the person who was involved, the people who were in the group, the community that it was, and yeah, it just. Even as like a conversation piece, I've talked to people about it who have like worked in government and stuff like that, and just interesting connections have been made from it. And I'm like, wow, you never know.
Well, I guess I'd like to retract my statement that I don't have a problem with the West Seneca Police. I changed that. Fuck those motherfuckers.
Yeah, no. The Twitter's funny though.
No, the Twitter is. Well, that's my thing. My thing is like,
it's not worth $8.6 billion.
Right.
Million, sorry.
For sure. But my point being is that West Seneca, like, there's not much to, there's not much going on here. This is a result of our police officers being bored. You know what I mean? Like, that kind of thing. But yeah, I agree with the sentiment. Anyway, yeah, the same thing, like, with my group of, my class in high school, like, I feel like, we all got along pretty well. There wasn't super cliquey. I feel like I got along with I remember sitting at, like, in lunch, like, sitting at a lunch table surrounded by people from, like, all different, like, there was, like, football players and, like, kids in band and, like, all kind of sitting together. So, that we're just, like, I don't know. It's just that kind of town. Like, everybody's just kind of, like, chilling.
Yeah, it's a decent place.
Yeah, I did break up a few fights. I prevented a few fights from happening, and some English teacher, I don't remember her name. Miss Joba, maybe. I might have been her. No, fuck, I don't remember her name. Blonde lady, really nice. I didn't actually have her, but she like witnessed me. Like
Hurley?
Yes, it was Mrs. Hurley, and she has witnessed me prevent two or three fights from happening like throughout the year, and she was like, we got to give you like a peacekeeper award or something. She's like, I've watched you prevent fights from happening, and I'm just like, because it's just not worth it. Like, I understood that very early on. I was like, because I think I saw a fight like my freshman year happen, and it's like, dude, you get arrested and you get suspended. It's like, dude, like, and what are you fighting over? You know what I mean? Like something dumb. Like, yeah, it's so easy to just like let it go and walk by somebody, whatever. But that was like the height of like anything that I ever, really. There was I don't remember. I feel like most of the drama that there was stuff that like I was involved with that like I caused like for myself. Like I faked my death one time as a joke.
What?
Yeah, that's a long story.
I don't remember that.
No, that was my sophomore year, so it would have been right after you graduated. But yeah, it was a whole thing. I've told this story to a lot of people. I'm trying to figure out a way to make it a stand-up joke, but I did. I was like, I had missed first block, and then my buddy like texted me. He's like, this was like social media was just popping off. You know what I mean? So it was like 2010, and like this is getting to a point where everybody's just starting to be on social media. Like, it wasn't new by any means, but
Isn't that weird, by the way?
That we grew up during that time.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But continue.
It is. It's super weird because it was like, social media was such a new thing. And it was just like when I was in 7th or 8th grade, they had just made Facebook available to teenagers. Like, it was before that, it was only college kids.
Yeah.
So like 7th, 8th grade, they make it available for teenagers. And I remember making one and telling people about it, and people were like, what is Facebook?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because people were still on MySpace at this time, and we were just using AIM MySpace. And yeah. And so, but this time, this is now sophomore year, so a few years later, and like this is now everybody had just started using Facebook, and he was like, yo, can we put RIP Aiden on Facebook? He's like, I just want to see like how many people will believe it, and like how many people will just like what people will say about you. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, they're like, and I don't know why he decided it was going to be me who did it, but I was like, that sounds funny. Let's do it. And so I'd missed first block, right? So then I come in second block, and it was in media production, which is in the basement of the school. So like I get by without anybody seeing me, right?
Yeah.
And he posts it, and one person follows a few minutes later, like posting who's not in our class. And she was in my first block math class. So it's like, oh yeah, well, she knows that I wasn't there today. you know, so of course she believes it. And it's like,
Oh my god.
so she posted, we're laughing about it, you know, like even the teacher's laughing about it, you know, and then it just like, and then all of a sudden a bunch of people are posting it, you know, and like in a very, very short amount of time it got out of hand. And I'm getting like texts from like my cousins at other schools. Like Liam was going to ECC. Someone like had said something to him about it. Like,
Oh my god.
got out of hand real quick. Yeah, it was
Wow.
bad.
Like a humble brag. Everyone in the entire city and world. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. They all cared.
Well, that's nice though.
I guess. But it also felt so fake. Like that girl, the girl who posted it first, like she was so mean to me.
Oh.
Yeah, and she was like, you know, fly high, baby boy, that kind of shit. Remember people would
I
say
love
that
the fly
all the
high
time?
baby girl. That's the first thing I always say. Like, R.I.P. R.I.P. Fly high baby girl.
Yeah. And the 2000, if you went to high school in the 2010s, that was the go-to message. Yeah, but yeah, that was like the most. And then like I filmed a rap music video at a party and got in trouble for that. But other than that, I feel like I don't remember too much going wrong. I feel like everybody got along pretty well. Yeah. Middle school, definitely a lot of drama, but there's so many hormones running around there, you know?
Yeah. Middle school. I did middle school at St. Martin's.
Yeah. Oh,
So
man.
that was a lot. And
I see that's something I never experienced because I was out of there before then.
Yeah, and I think because we also had a class of like 46, so like, and I think about this frequently where I'm like, that little microcosm of community feels like the entire world.
Of course, yeah.
Especially when
When something goes wrong, it's like the end of the world, yeah.
the end of the world, but
Yeah.
it's literally a group of like 46, 11, and 12-year-olds.
Yeah.
And
in South Buffalo.
In South Buffalo.
Yeah.
On a street corner.
Yeah.
It's not the world.
Right.
But it feels like it is at the time.
Of course.
But yeah, that was middle school.
I say that quite often is that I'm like, when I was a little kid, I thought South Buffalo was the entire world.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm sure that's how everybody feels about wherever they live when, you know, but we never went anywhere, you know, and it's like, we never left South Buffalo. Like my family, I remember my grandma lived in this house that we're in right now, which was 10 minutes from my house. And I remember it felt so far away. Like I remember driving to my grandma's house and being like, this feels like it's taking forever. Yeah. It was a 10-minute drive to West Seneca from South Buffalo. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's weird. And then, yeah, that's so weird.
Mm-hmm.
Things just expand as we grow. And yeah, because I remember like 20 minutes felt like days.
Yeah.
And then I like moved to London and I've like lived in all over the place, gone all over the place. And it's like, I remember the first time stepping out like on ground in Europe and being like, wow, there's so much going on. There's so many people. This world is so fucking big.
Yeah.
Like it's insane perspective is insane. We'll just
totally. Yeah.
Period on that.
I still have never gotten that. I've never left North America.
Really?
Yeah. I want to really badly, but I'm poor.
Yeah. It's not the ideal, time to travel.
You know what? I wish I would have just gone in college. Like if I was going to be in debt anyway, you know, I should have just gone and studied abroad.
But for whatever reason, we're here now doing this, you know? So I don't like to like regret because, you know, you did what you did at the time because you did.
Yeah. That's a big problem that I have. I'm a person who like, it's very hard for me not to like look in the past and be like, fuck, I wish I didn't do that. I wish I did do that. I wish I took advantage of that. All these things because like, and then I just find myself in this like miserable state of mind of like, this is why I'm 27, still live in my parents' house. And if I did this differently, it's like, yeah, but then that's actually something that is like the hardest question I've ever had to ask myself was like, with the amount of debt that I took on after college, it's like, would you, if you could go back though at 18 and decide not to go, would you not go? And it's like, I don't know, because it's like,
it's a heavy question.
It is, because those 4 years were like the best 4 years of my life. And that's when I like really found myself and like felt like it was the first time that I could be exactly who I wanted to be, you know, where I wasn't confined within the suburbs and like the walls of my parents' home where I was constantly trying to like meet their expectations, you know?
Yeah. And which you can't put a price on.
Exactly.
And people had told me that before I went to college. Like I remember my one track coach telling me, she's like, you know, she went to Brockport, and she was like, it was expensive. I dormed there the whole time I was there. I joined a sorority. It was expensive. I'm still in debt. I'm gonna be in debt until I'm like 50, but I loved it. I loved the experience. Would not change it. Fuck money. Like, just do what you want to do, and you'll find your way. And I was like, nice. I still have insane like financial worries and everything, but that really did inform me too. Where I was like, you know what? She's right. Like, if I just do what I want to do, then it'll find its
Everything
way.
will figure itself out, yeah. I'm a big believer in that. And I've said that on this podcast before, that put your faith in the universe and everything will work out, you know?
Yeah. And
put your faith in the universe and don't be a shithead.
Yeah, put your faith... Well, so put your faith in the universe, but also put your faith in yourself to be able to be actionable about the things that you want to do. Because this is something that I always... Like, I'm a psychic medium. So
there it is. The bomb's been dropped, everybody.
So that's something that I always, well, not always, because like certain conditions, and I know like you said you like want to talk about, I write horoscopes.
Right. Love that shit.
Monthly horoscopes, not like anything crazy. But
that's what I think, not to cut you off, but I think that is the biggest, because I definitely, there's a lot. I mean, I can now see demographics of this podcast, which is cool, which is, I think it's interesting, because when I first started it, it was mostly dudes that listen, and now it flipped and it's mostly girls.
Nice.
So, but, you know, astrology is generally something that, you know, for the most part is like a woman enjoyed thing. Like, it's very popular among women. And at least in my experience, what I've seen is like every girl I know is at least will hear about it.
Yeah.
You know, at least will keep an open mind about it. But like every dude I know is like, fuck that, bro. Like, it's fake, it's lame, it's dumb, it's like whatever. And it's like, dude, just like, you don't even understand what we're talking about. Like, just listen for a second. Because I think a lot of people get turned away because it's like, oh, you're going to read a horoscope in a newspaper, it's going to tell you, it's going to predict the future. It's like, no, that's not what this is at all. It's like, that's how it's been portrayed to you.
Sure.
It's like, but I think the idea of it being like this kind of thing, this minute under the surface thing, you know what I mean? Like with a monthly horoscope, you know, where like that makes much more sense. It's like, hey, here's how things are moving in space right now, and here's how this energy is moving, and here's how it might affect what's going on from time to time. But you still have full like free will to control things. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And I think that's what people don't understand about astrology.
Yeah, and that's almost like point one that I always make with people in any sort of reading. I'm like, first and foremost, like, so if I'm doing a psychic reading, I say like, you know, what's going to come up is the energy that is present at this time, and you have free will. You know, if you don't like it, you can change it. If you do like it, keep going and keep reflecting and keep understanding what's going on and knowing what you're doing, and just it's to provide a sense of knowing, or like a sense of flow, and that's always my goal. Is I say, like, before I do a reading, I set an intention, or before I write my horoscopes, I set an intention. And I said, like, for the horoscopes, for example, I'll say like, all right, so like I actually use tarot to do it. That's my way I connect. I don't do like the planets and like all that stuff.
Sure.
So I'm also like an energy channeler, which I guess I need to define that, because what does that mean?
Yeah.
So I set an intention, and then to do something, to process some sort of energy, and then I can process it and like write about it or speak about it. How that all happens, I don't really have an explanation for. I just know that I do that.
And that's where you need a little bit of faith, right?
Yeah, and just it's also to kind of go back to what you were saying about like guys versus girls. I think it's easier for women or the feminine to go into the right brain, which is the more like artistic, creative, emotional regulation part of your brain, versus the analytical is the left side of the brain, which is like more like A plus B equals C, you know?
Right.
It's your math brain, it's your history, facts, all inert kind of things.
Sure.
Which like I feel like men's brains more lean towards that.
Makes sense.
And to do energy work, to do psychic mediumship, to create art, you have to be in your right brain.
Mm-hmm.
So that's also a thing where it's like, well, artists are also a little bit more open-minded because they're able to go into that flow
Right.
much easier. But like women naturally and inherently go into flow because that's a part of who they are. Like if you just think of like, I don't want to get too much into like science, but like you think about like the moon, you think about like menstrual cycles, like
Dude, that is like the biggest like proof to me there is, you know what I mean, of like how like the idea of a month, right, is literally based on the moon. And the fact that like a menstrual cycle where a woman bleeds once a month, like once every time the moon goes around, you know, this happens. It's like how, like that's something, you know.
And also like women are incredible creatures.
Big
like,
facts. Shout out women.
Also, like I think of like women are literally a portal to the spirit world.
Absolutely.
They bring souls through their body to this like earth plane.
There's another
like,
thing. Yeah.
And
yeah, I agree.
So when someone's like, well, maybe the stars also inform how your emotions and actions could potentially end up. It's like, well, yeah, because that makes sense. That already happens to me on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
You know?
1,000%.
But
I
like
love
men,
that.
it's harder because it's like, it's not as inherent,
right?
I guess.
And that's so like for me, like as far as like my belief system goes, right, like when I was growing up, right, raised Catholic, you know, I got to a point like in my teenage years where I was like, this is bullshit, like this is, none of this makes any sense, there's so many plot holes in this story, you know what I mean, like there's so much like God is love, but God is fear, and God is controlling, and all this, like, and there's all these rules. It's like, none of this makes any sense, you know. And we got to go there once a week and like give them money. None of this makes sense, right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, all right, boom, atheism. No such thing. There's nothing going on. You die. It's black. That's it, right?
Yeah.
And then I started eating mushrooms from time to time, and that's when I was like, wait a minute, you know, and having conversations like this where I was like, have you done mushrooms before?
I've never done mushrooms, but I've done other psychedelic experience. I've had a shamanic experience. Like I worked with a shaman.
Right. So yeah, that sounds cool. That sounds like something I would like.
It was pretty intense. Yeah. It was. Well, finish your thought because that's a whole other story.
Sure. So,
yeah.
Yeah, when you take mushrooms, the one thing that I know that everybody has in common when you take mushrooms is you have this realization that everything is connected. Like you just access this part of your brain that you've never accessed before, which it feels like a portal to the universe, or like a little piece of what the universe is, and you just feel this. You can just feel energy moving. You know what I mean? And the fact that mushrooms are something that like grow naturally out of the ground, that it like is this connection to the universe, and like there's this documentary on Netflix about mushrooms and how they're a network and how like all that shit. So like all of it, just like there's a lot of boxes being checked, you know. And the idea that you know, we're all connected in one energy really became like this thing I started to think about, you know. So like, and the idea that astrology is all based on like things that are actually happening in the universe. You know what I mean? It's based on how the planets align to where we are, how we are placed in the universe in perspective of the universe itself, and vice versa. You know what I mean? I also really like the idea of like we exist in a universe and there's an entire universe within us as well. You know what I mean? Like it's all kind of like a Russian nesting doll of energy.
Not Russia. But yeah, you're right. We are the microcosm of the macrocosm,
right? And it's also the idea that you were talking about, like with like spirituality with women. It's like if we're going to put some sort of human factor to God, there's no way it's a man, like in at least how I view it, because it's just like the idea of like, because I believe quote unquote God. I don't like the personification of God, right? Like I like the idea of God as the universe, right? It's just this is one energy that exists, and we are all part of it, and it's all part of us, and all that. And like, you know, almost like Mother Nature as a reference, you know what I mean? Of like, there's just like this energy that exists is motherly, you know what I mean? It's like it's care, and you know, as everything you said, and like, yeah, and then when you scale it down to the idea of like birthing life and you know, stuff that it's just like hey, to my fellow straight guy friends that are maybe not the creative types, it's like, just, I don't know, take some mushrooms and think about some shit.
Yeah, and something you said earlier in that, when you said mushrooms open you up to something you've never accessed before or experienced before. That's always kind of at the core of it.
Mm-hmm. Of psychedelics, you mean?
Well, so anything in life is like, it's just like, I have not accessed this yet.
Right.
So, and I think that's where people get tripped up on things because, or even like when I tell people I'm a psychic medium, they go, "Oh, you believe in that?" I go, "No, it's not a belief. It's something I have access to.
Right.
I do it.
Yeah.
It's not a belief.
Right.
It's as simple as me drinking this water. It's as real as me drinking this water. Like, I do it.
Right.
It's a part of me. So no, it's not a belief. So like, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
Like,
whether you want to believe that or not, if you want to believe I'm not drinking this water, fine. But
but I am. So that's weird. So, but yeah, and I have, like, people try to get into arguments about it with me. They're like, well, there's proof that it doesn't exist.
Right.
And I'm like,
and I don't, that's what I'm saying.
What?
It's like people who argue with me about astrology, it's like, what, like, I understand the idea of the basis of it, that like all religion, like this, distaste, I guess, maybe the word, for religion in general because of organized religion and the idea of like these belief systems that started, that people then turned around to try to like control other people and tell them what to do based on what they believed in. You know what I mean? Like, this is just like the idea of like spirituality and stuff is so like, it's not causing any harm to anybody else. It's just something that I think is interesting and makes me feel like there's a purpose for being around here. And dude, like, as someone who has identified as an atheist in my past, how fucking boring, you know, like, oh yeah, we're just here for nothing. It's like, then kill yourself now. If you're going to, and why won't you?
You're just going to come back. So,
right.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just,
also that, like, oh, go ahead.
I'm just, the people who are just like skeptics that feel the need to like argue and push against something that you believe in that has nothing to do with them. Like, dude, just fucking, first of all, just let people be. If you want to have a conversation about it, we can discuss it, and I'll tell you why I think it's based in reality, you know, and but don't fucking sit here and argue. I'm not trying to push it on you at all. This is just what I am and what I believe in. Fuck off.
Yeah.
That's all I got to say about that.
And that's for anyone, I mean, and that's about anything in life, you know? It's like, if you are unsure or don't understand something, ask questions. And I think that's always the biggest thing with just trying to gain access to something you've never accessed before. Mm-hmm. Just ask questions. Right. Someone's like, this is what informs me. How does it inform you? What is the basis? Like, how do you connect with it? What does it tell you? How does that change your perspective on things? You know, just like, ask questions, and you might gain access, like you said, to something you've never accessed before.
1,000%. Yeah.
And, but yeah, I mean, as I get older, I ask more questions rather than trying to have fights or whatever with people.
Totally. I this is something I've realized recently. Now, you're a few years older than me, so that, you know, maybe I'm on the trajectory just a little late, you know, but that is something, because I'm a person who, I have very strong political opinions, and I will get, you know, I have in my past, you know, gotten into very heated arguments with people over shit, and I don't really do that anymore. I've kind of, especially through the pandemic, when things got really, like, people got really heated about stuff, people got really sensitive about everything. And like, this notion that it was just people on the left is ridiculous, because it's like, we saw just how sensitive everybody on the right was at the same time. And so, like, you know, I learned a lot from that it's like, oh, okay, this is not how I want to be, and I'm not going to get anywhere being this confrontational, and I'm just going to do, you know, what I can to just keep learning and understanding, right? Like, that's all I want to do. And if somebody does want to have a discussion on that and learn and will ask questions, then I'll have that discussion with them. Yeah. But other than that, I'm pretty much good, you know?
You have to be protective of your energy. Mm-hmm. And like,
absolutely. Because that's what happened, is I just like mentally was just like defeated. You know, I was just, my brain was just waving the white flag. Like, please just make this stop. Like, I can't take it anymore.
Yeah. And, as we get better about our boundaries, that's when you start to, so like, boundaries are how you protect your energy. And like, this is what I can take, this is what I can't take.
I'm getting real good at that lately.
Yeah, and it's so important. And like I always tell people, I'm like, the more you know yourself, the easier it is to be around other people, because you can separate what is theirs and what is yours, and you can separate someone else's like projections onto you.
Yeah,
and like
that was a big one for me.
So like I find this even in my relationships and with friends. It's like someone will start saying like, you do this and I don't like because you do this and you said this, and I'm like, no, I don't do that, because I know where I'm coming from. So I'm going to turn this back on to you. Why are you projecting that onto me?
Right.
Because, and that's not from like an arrogant or like narcissistic place. It's like,
because it can be. That's the whole thing. It definitely can be. Yeah.
And some people have that false, like they have this false perspective or false projection to people, to the world, that they're like more confident than they actually are, and it's a defensive.
Yeah.
Versus like when you have boundaries and you're exercising your boundaries and you're saying, no, I know where I'm coming from, and what you are dealing with is an unresolved trauma or an unresolved emotion that's just like coming through, and you're trying to put it onto me.
Yep.
Because you're uncomfortable, and that's okay.
Totally.
And like, and I say this, and it's like, I say this to people, I'm like, in this moment, like, I'm not judging you. I'm not trying to change your opinion. I'm not like, I just want to find understanding.
Right. And allowing that person to be vulnerable.
And then like,
which is where you get growth.
People like,
yeah.
And then they're like, oh my God. And then the real stuff comes out.
Right.
And I mean, I have a psychology background. I've been energy reading and psychic reading for 8 years. So like,
you got the accolades.
Yeah, like it's easier for me to do that.
Totally.
Because I've been doing it for so long.
I'm working on it.
Yeah, which like everyone has to start somewhere, and it's like, and if your starting point, if you want to find a starting point, just ask questions, and then also go to therapy. Everyone go to therapy.
I say it every week.
Like, because the better you know yourself, the less you are triggered by other people.
Absolutely.
So
that was like the protect your energy thing, because growing, like, for my whole life, my biggest thing, and I've been very open about this, if anybody is close to me, they know this, that like my biggest thing was I always cared so much about what everybody thought of me. You know, I just cared about everybody's opinions of me so much. And especially, as we were talking about earlier, in the era that we grew up in, where like we grew up when social media became popular and we didn't know what it was yet.
Yeah.
And we didn't know how to react to it, and we're just putting everything online and just putting ourselves out there to be judged at all times.
Yeah.
I had a little side tangent, but I had my friend Julie came on, who is a social worker. I had her on last season, and she was talking about how there's research done for like the younger generation now about like their mental health due to social media, and like the results were like surprising, is that it doesn't really affect them all that much. And it's because of what my theory at least is, like I was so taken back by that. I was like, how? But like when they were born into a world where it already was established and it already existed, and like so they like figured out how to navigate it from a super early age, where like for us, like it kind of hit us in the face as teenagers, the worst fucking time to hit people. And you know, where we kind of knew what life was like without being exposed all the time, and then to have that, you know, where here's like just posting everything and constantly being judged, and you know, that I think that, and I was addicted to it. I loved it. I was such an anxious kid, and I just like, you know, came from, you know, being the second youngest of 6 boys. You know, it was like so much for me to try to fit in, and I just wanted to be liked, and I struggled because I was like kind of the different one, you know, where it was like all my brothers were like into sports and these kind of like more like macho-y guys, not like totally, but like more than I was, you know, where I was like, I like writing and like playing songs and stuff, and they were like, you're gay, and I'm like, I don't think I am, you know, but fuck you, but yeah, trying to, you know, navigate all that was a lot. So like I spent so much time caring about what everybody thought of me, and like once I came to that realization of that, like around late college, was like, wow, I was like, I really wasted so much time giving a shit what everybody thought of me, you know? And it was like, and now trying to like unlearn that and like really have faith in myself and in my energy and understand that that needs to be protected. And it's like, and if someone doesn't like me, like knowing that I'm so well intentioned and knowing that I'm providing care and love for the people around me, if someone decides that they don't like me, then it's like, all right, then I just don't fuck with that person.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, and we're not meant to, you know, until they figure their own shit out and realize, hey, I had no reason not to like you. That was something I was projecting onto you, you know, whatever. So
yeah. I mean, there's a lot there.
This is how I am, man.
Not in a bad way, but I'm like, there's so many good points that you're making that I want to comment on. That's what I mean by that.
I recently found out I have ADHD.
Me too.
Shout out us.
Look
at us. Shout out neurodivergency. I didn't know that was a thing, and so many of my questions in life have been answered. Of like, why am I different? You know, and like, why do I think about things at 1,000 miles a minute? And can't, you know, slow it down. And so that all makes sense.
To that point, we also have this model of the world of how we're supposed to be. And I think so many people try to fit into this model that just does not make sense for them. And we need to call it something. This world loves labels, which I have my own thing about labels. I'm very careful with words and labels and calling things and naming things, because then we can get too attached to it, you know? And I say this about like disorders, disease, like all different sorts of things, because that also has an energetic component to it. Or even just like, I could talk about this forever, but to be careful with the way we name things and to think about when I try to take a step back and look at things as like energy. So like if you have a hard time focusing, you just, there's a solution, you know? You have to do more things that help you to feel comfortable, to feel in your body, to focus. Like I remember my friend's daughter, they said she had ADD, and they immediately were like, we suggest the school psychologist or whoever said that she had ADD and she should go on Ritalin. Or Adderall or whatever.
Yeah.
Little girl in like kindergarten.
Yeah, it's no.
And my friend was like, all right. And then her daughter became like a zombie.
Yeah, of course.
And then...
especially in those early developmental years, like Christ.
Yeah. Which overprescribing medications is also something that we could talk about, but that's a whole other story.
I feel like most people understand that one. I mean, in the age of where we're at right now with like an opioid crisis and everything, like that is just, you know, the tip of the iceberg of...
Yeah. For sure
how it is, but
to that point, my friend was like, this isn't my daughter and I'm not going to keep her like this. So had her taken off the medication, and then she talked to the teacher. She's like, you know, she just needs a little more attention. What can you do? So they put a star sticker on her desk. If she started to do something else, the teacher would point to the star, and that was a sign to get her to refocus. That's all she needed.
Yeah.
She just needed something to remind her that she had a task to attend to. So it's like, and I always tell this to people in readings and stuff too, where it's like, whatever your healing is, like healing is always possible. And like feeling good is always possible. And I think too many times people think they have a disease or a condition or whatever, and they get so attached to it.
Yeah.
And then it feels like there's no solution, because it's like, I have this thing. And it's like, well, what are you doing to, like, what is your personality and how do you connect to the world, or how do you not connect to the world? And what are you doing to heal your body, heal your mind? How is your diet? Like looking at everything in a really holistic perspective, which unfortunately, like our medical model doesn't necessarily attend to.
Because it's not profitable.
Yes. Yeah. But that's a whole other thing that we could get into. But yeah, I always say that to people because I'm like I have been very fortunate to come across like incredible healing mechanisms and modalities throughout my life, where I'm like, oh, like someone presents a problem to me, I'm like, oh, have you ever done craniosacral? And they're like, no, I don't know what that is. And I'm like, well, that's a therapy that's done by a professional who's kind of an energy worker but also a body worker, and they manipulate like your fascia and your energy field, and it rebalances your nervous system is what it does. So people who have like overactive nervous systems or have a hard time focusing, sometimes it's just like recalibrating your nervous system. And there's different things you can try. You can do like acupuncture, you can do like, there's some Reiki and like so many other things that you can do to just support yourself to be your best self in this world that exists and has expectations, which you can choose to try to meet and like work with or not, you know?
Right.
And there's always support to help you connect to whatever you need to connect to, I guess is what I'm saying.
I saw a TikTok recently about this guy was just talking about that everybody in his life that he knows that has ADHD is all of the ones that were the most like successful and like found like peace in the way that they live are all working jobs that are like doing stuff that doesn't abide by a schedule. You know what I mean? Like just like, and that has been like the most helpful thing to them. So I thought that was interesting. But I mean, for me, you know, I work a 9-to-5 job, so I have to be, you know, focused in that time, which I struggled with, especially working from home was tough. So, I mean, the things that I did, like I keep my phone down, like I work upstairs, keep my phone downstairs while I'm working because my phone is like the biggest like trigger of like getting distracted. And then meditation as well. I mean, when I first started meditating, it was so hard because it's like the idea of just like focusing on nothing, essentially like focusing internally and like trying to just like focus on one thing was just so difficult because I got so distracted so easily where like I'm doing stuff, whether it's, you know, I do like a guided thing where it's telling me to focus on my breath and I'm trying to, but it's so easy for my brain to just wander off, you know. But the more I did it, when I was doing it every day, it was like eventually it was like so focused, you know what I mean, that like, and I was in such a good spot. I should get back to that, I think.
You know what's interesting too? Yoga was initially, this is what a friend told me, I don't know the validity of it, but she said yoga was actually initially developed as a movement meditation for boys who like could not sit still and meditate in stillness. So like,
interesting.
It put them into this, like, there was the physical body component, which like you can't think while you're in these like strenuous poses, and you're forced to focus on your breath and pay attention to your movement. And like that is really good for people who have a hard time focusing or saying like, I can't meditate. Of course you can. Again, there's always a solution.
Right.
So like maybe it's just like movement meditation.
Right.
Is
Different types of meditations. Yeah.
Or even like,
doing them like a lot, like a daily, like in a routine, like not just like you do it. You can't do it once and expect it to like go super well. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's a skill that you have to develop.
Yes.
And which I think a lot of people don't realize.
Yeah. And also recalibrating your nervous system to be able to accept that and move into those spaces, which takes a little bit. It can take like a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever. If it takes you 2 years, at least you're doing it, you know? But you have to start. And yeah, there's always a solution is like what I always come down to. I'm like, people are like, oh, I can't do this, or like, this is my problem. And I'm like, well, let's look for the solutions. Because I think that sometimes we get a little too problem focused. This is my problem. This is my issue. And it's like, well, what's on the other side of that?
Right.
What can you move towards instead of moving away from?
That's been my biggest struggle lately is I'm trying to like not to use it as a scapegoat for everything, but I'm in this point where like I just got diagnosed with it and just realized that I had it. So now it's like, now I'm thinking about every behavior that I do and I'm like, oh my God, that's why I do this. That's why I do this. Like, and just like, but I'm also realizing like, okay, I can't just like say that and like accept it as that's how it is, you know, like I still have to.
It's a part of your journey and how you're learning.
Yeah.
And to even go back to like what you're saying before, like even existing in this like state of like regret or like what could I have changed to get to a better place?
Always.
And it's like, again, like I reframe it as like, what have I learned from this?
Yeah.
And how can I do better the next time? And like my belief and experience with working as an energy worker is that a lot of times our life is a pattern and it travels kind of like in a spiral. So like maybe like you're down here, lower vibration, like regret, guilt, don't feel good about yourself, you're down here. And then you're like traveling, and then you learn to like know yourself more. You learn about love, you learn about higher vibrational emotions, love, acceptance, forgiveness, all those types of things. And you encountered similar situations again in a different capacity, and you have an opportunity to choose differently. And yeah, that's instead, because some people stop themselves in that spiral upward because it gets too hard, or they are scared, or they just don't know what to do next, or they don't have the modalities or the practitioners to help them get through it. I just did a reading for a guy this past weekend where he was with someone for like 20 years, and he went through a divorce. So like I'm doing the reading, and I'm like and then all of a sudden the energy just stopped. Like I was like, when I'm feeling your energy, there's a wall, there's a block. Your energy is not moving. And he was like, well, and I'm like, you aren't living. You're living, but you're not living. You're not connected to your experience. You're not connected to your flow.
Right. You're just getting through the day.
Yeah. And that's because he was constantly thinking about the past. And it's like, and he was worried that like even moving forward, that the past would happen again. And I'm like, so, and we identified that, and we gave a name to it. And I was like, I feel your energy, his energy started to move again. He cried a little bit, was like, you know what? Yes. Like I don't feel connected to my experience. I don't feel connected to my life. I am scared that I'm going to get hurt again. And I was like, yeah, understandably.
Right.
You were in a relationship for half of your life.
Yeah.
And now there's another side to it. There's like, you have a whole other part of life to experience, and you need to heal from that experience, that past experience, in order to move forward. Because right now you're not letting yourself live because of fear, because of regret, because of guilt. And he was like, yeah, you're right. And I'm like, so I can like talk to your therapist. He was seeing a therapist. I'm like, take this to your therapist. And that's what I've been finding a lot of stuff in my readings. I'm like, take this to another practitioner who can help you to further process it. Yeah. And to further support you.
That was the biggest thing I noticed when I first started going to therapy, was the amount of times that I would say I should have about things. And my therapist...
Don't shit on yourself.
Right. My therapist would always stop me and be like, you shouldn't have. Because if you should have, then you would have. Like if the universe had set it up that you were supposed to do it this way, then you would have done it that way. But because it was done this way, then it was an opportunity for you to learn that next time that you know what I mean? Like we're all just, and that's what I mean about putting your faith in the universe, is that like when things go wrong, like you just have to trust that the universe is showing you something and teaching you something about yourself that is going to
full circle to the beginning.
The spiral. Full circle. But yeah, I don't know. Put your faith in yourself. You did.
Yes. So like, then that's what happens in readings, where it's like, put your faith in yourself, put your faith in the universe, but also put your faith in yourself.
Right.
Because it does require action on your part.
Totally. Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's the thing where people get weird about astrology. They're like, well, this is going to tell me what I have to do. No, because you always have free will.
Right.
Sometimes in my astrology readings, it's like, you have an incredible amount of energetic momentum to get something done, but it won't get done without your action. It's not going to fall into your lap. You're going to have conversations. You're going to have to move forward. It might mean like getting rid of something. It might be like traveling out of your comfort zone, but you are in that time frame, you're incredibly supported for it to be successful, but it requires action on your part.
Totally. Yeah.
And so like the universe or your guides or angels or whatever you believe in that is like in your energy field that supports you, there is support there. And sometimes there's extra support, and sometimes they pull back and are like, what are you going to do?
Referring to it as a guide. I like that.
Spirit guide, whatever, a guide. I don't know.
Well, the universe, like how, like just for me, like how I like the universe being a guide.
Yeah.
And,
because it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And then your free will, like just making the right choices based on your best intentions of what you already know, and everything will work out if it's supposed to. I think,
Yeah, and even if it doesn't work out, there's a lesson there,
right?
And you can be like, okay, so what did I learn from this experience, and how can I move that forward with me? But so many people get caught up in the regret, guilt, past, like keep going, like just keep going, and you'll figure it out. I had a friend once told me, she was like, whatever choice you make is the right choice because it's the choice you made.
Right.
You can't go back.
Essentially, the same thing that my therapist was saying. Yeah, like if you should have made that choice, then you would have made that choice.
Right.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. I love this shit, dude. This is like, I'm so happy you're here because this is my favorite type of episode to have, of like these like conversations that are just like, beneath the surface a little bit,
Yeah, it's my whole life is about depth and connection.
Yeah, same.
And so like, that's what I'm constantly seeking.
Mm-hmm.
But like our world is like mostly about like superficial and like next best thing.
And it's so hard to navigate that. And that's the thing that is like, I think about it all the time. I'm like, God, I wish some people were just down here with me where my thoughts are, you know what I mean? And like we can, because connecting on it is the best, what is your sun sign?
So it's funny.
Or is that like go against whatever you're in or whatever?
No. So, well, there's two dominant schools of astrology.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, because I know there's different.
It's like the tropical and the sidereal, I believe, are the two.
Okay.
And the one, or if you want to be like Western Eastern, because there's also like
right. I do know about that. Yeah, I've heard a little bit. Yeah.
So like in Western astrology, I'm a Leo.
Okay.
So in Western astrology, which is like the most commonly accepted here.
That's the only one I know about. Yeah.
I'm a Leo sun, Taurus moon, Capricorn rising.
Interesting.
But in the other one, I'm Cancer sun, Aries moon, Sagittarius rising. So all of my signs are kind of on a cusp. All my big three are on a cusp. Yeah. And we're also, so whatever sign is in your chart, you're also affected by the opposite sign.
Right. So check this out. So I'm a Pisces sun, and I'm a Virgo moon, which are literally opposites of each other. Yeah. Which like makes so much sense because I'm such an emotional fucking mess.
And neurotic.
Yeah.
Which is like Virgo is super neurotic.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, so for me, that's all 12 signs. Right. And I like said this to one of my teachers who's an astrologer, and she was like, well, I've never heard of that. I was like, cool. Yeah. So I was like, what does that mean for me? And she's like, well, I guess your job is to think outside the box. And I was
Seems
like,
quite vague.
Right. But I'm like, well, I mean, I write horoscopes. I give psychic readings. Like I can tune into all of the different signs pretty easily. And she's like, well, yeah, because you kind of are all of them. Right. So, but that's what I think is funny about astrology, because like people are like, well, and then I'm like, well, in my case, I'm like a special case. Yeah. But like for some people, it stays the same. Right. Like their signs stay the same in both schools.
If we've lost anybody listening right now, which I'm sure we have, the thing with the astrology, like your signs and stuff. So a lot of people at like the very base, like what your sun sign is. Your sun sign is like your main identifier, right? And so, I am a Pisces, right? So that is my sun sign. And that's the thing that people, again, going back to like what people don't understand about it is they're like, so everybody born in this month is the same person? It's like, no, not even close. It's because you have a whole natal chart, right? So it's like and what the natal chart represents is when you were born, at the time you were born, in the location you were born in, where the planets were, basically like a straight line up from the location at the time you were born, how the planets were aligned in the sky, and those planets determine the energy, right? How it determines that energy, that's where you need a little bit of faith, as I always say. Like, that's like where it's like, you just got to, like, that's what I believe in, right? Is that there's an energy moving, and that where the planets are in the sky, or anything that's moving in the universe, shifts that energy.
Yeah. So different planets are associated with different attributes.
Right.
So like Venus is like the planet of like love.
Yeah.
So there's different themes that run through each planet and setup. But yeah, so astrology can get really complicated.
Totally.
And
I know. I focus on my big three and call it a day because I can understand that. So the big three, if you've ever heard that referenced, is your sun sign, your moon sign, your rising sign. So sun, your identity, moon is your emotions, and then your rising sign is how people perceive you, right?
Yeah, in the most
most basic terms.
Yeah, foundationally, yes.
Yeah. So as a Pisces sun, like in the most basic way I could say it quickly is like my Pisces sun, right? Very emotional guy. My Virgo moon, as we said, very neurotic. And then I'm a Scorpio rising, which also, when I learned that, that's when I was like, oh my God, that makes so much sense, because the Scorpio rising is like, people perceive me as much more confident than I am, when I'm really this kind of like, I'm like my true self. How I feel is like I'm a very introverted, like to myself kind of guy. I'm very anxious, all of these things, but I do have like this like extroverted part of me that, you know, does seem very outgoing and likes going out and having fun and all these things. So like when you learn about your big three, look into your big three. I'm telling you, just keep an open mind and read about those things. It's super interesting, and I'd be surprised if you read all of it and was like, yeah, that's not me, because it's easy to look at one sun sign and go, yeah, but that can be anybody, you know. It's like, but once you start to look at all of them, you're like, no, this is me specifically.
Yeah, it's super informing. And I mean, oh God, what was I gonna say? Oh yes, so some people also say like your sun sign is the superficial aspect of who you are, like on the surface.
Okay.
So like what you tend to, how you learn your lessons essentially is like, and how you go through the world. So like how you go through the world, how you learn your lessons is as a Pisces.
Yeah.
And then they say, I've also read that like your rising sign is what you're moving towards. So like how you, in like more
that just
as
blew
you
my
mature,
fucking mind, because that makes a lot of sense as well.
And then moon sign, I believe I've also read, was who you were in your most recent past life.
Ooh, I like,
was.
This is fucking me up. And this is why I love this shit, because like you saying that, like just thinking about, like immediately like check some boxes for me. I was like, all that adds up for sure.
Yeah. So like so to just like take specifically your big three, a Pisces is the emotional, more. So Pisces is also the end of the astrological
calendar. I know
calendar.
that as well. Yeah.
So it's like a culmination of all of the signs exist in Pisces. So Pisces is also inherently very introspective. And then Scorpio is like a sign of like expression. Mm-hmm. It's a very expressive sign. You meet a Scorpio, you usually know they're a Scorpio because they're like life of the party.
Yeah.
They're also like probably have some really good revenge stories.
I've been described as the life of the party before, which I was surprised that someone described me that way.
So I mean, yeah, maybe that's something you're moving towards. What was your moon?
Virgo,
yeah. So
saying it that it's who you were in your past life makes so much sense, because I am like naturally drawn to Virgos. I love Virgos, and it's always because it's like I feel like I really understand who they are. You know what I mean? Like every time
it's also like your emotions and
right. That's true. Yeah, but the idea of like that, it would have been
there.
Right. Exactly, dude. Yeah. Wow, that's cool. See, this shit's so fun. Stop hating on it. That's the whole point of me doing this, is for my fellow boring straight white guys out there. It's fun. All right. And it's, I don't know. And I mean, maybe for me as like a creative person, I draw so much inspiration from it, you know?
Yeah, and there's also all different aspects of astrology. There's
Right.
also like astrocartography, which is like it's also based on the time you were born, and then there's different lines where like that go across a map. So it's
Yeah.
about maps and like where you find there's actually like a space where like you find most success in life is like between two of the lines. I forget exactly what they are.
Well, I'd be interested in that.
It's really interesting, and like if you
Figure out if I peaked yet.
there's also, but like I know some people who have like done it and moved to that space where they are supposed to find success or like
Yeah.
find the most life lessons.
So this is like a map of like the world?
Yeah, a map of the world.
Ooh.
So it's like it can be a line that goes across like the entire map. So it could be like from London down through like Brazil, and like maybe like the southernmost United States is like your line where you can pick a place.
Astrocartography, that's what this is called?
Yeah, and there's a
Damn, that sounds sick.
You can find a chart. I'll send it to you.
All right, cool.
It's really interesting. But I also just recently met a woman who is a fantastic craniosacral therapist, and I was asking her how she ended up in Buffalo, and she was like, astrocartography. And I was like, really? You put a lot of faith in that. And she's like, yeah. And but like the connection we made, we're like on the same page. Like it's insane. Like I don't know.
I'm getting a little emotional right now because this is me putting my faith in the universe kind of thing, and like the fact that this conversation is happening right now and everything we've been talking about. And I have been recently, very recently, within the last month or so, been feeling like I am like, at least at this point in my life, I feel like I am over Buffalo. Mm-hmm. Like I love it here so much. I have no disdain for it at all. But there's part of me that's just like, I feel like I like hit a ceiling here of like where I'm at in my life. Mm-hmm. And then, so like to say that, like the idea of like, you know, that this has been in the back of my mind and I've been pondering it. I've been thinking of places I like that I've been to. Like I love New York and I love Nashville and, you know, and thinking about that. And now the idea of like this astrocartography comes up. That's like, this is where the universe might say that you're supposed to go. And it's just like, fuck, like at this time in my life, when I'm thinking about that, this is when this conversation happens. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I mean, I've had those moments where like, when I decided to move to London.
Yeah.
I just like, I knew that it was a place where I was going to experience a lot of growth. Same thing about New York.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like New York.
Like,
I got a lot of friends that live in New York. My one friend, shout out John Greenan, my buddy John Greenan that lives in New York. I was talking to him about it and he was like, yeah, man, he's like, there's a low ceiling in Buffalo and New York City is like the highest ceiling that exists. You know what I mean? And my thing is like, I'm not talking about like permanently relocating, but at least for like a period of time, just to like go learn about myself and grow and then come back to Buffalo with newfound perspective, which I'm sure you've experienced like crazy, you know, living in London, living in a different part of the world. So did you go London straight to New York?
So I went London for my, I studied abroad in London and then fell in love with it. Was supposed to go to school in New York, rejected that offer, applied to school in London for a master's, did a master's there, moved back to Buffalo. Oh my God, a bridge version, this is going to sound insane, but moved back to Buffalo, was working for a psychic medium. She ended up being like, this might be where I lose some people, but she dabbled in some dark things, and I was working for her.
See, I like that shit. I think that's...
Which I never believed in. Oh my God.
There is though, because, and the reason of like not believing in like a darker side of things, because we were just talking about off camera, we were just talking about balance. You know what I mean? And that's the whole thing. That was my biggest thing with like the idea of like Catholicism, is that the idea that God is like this all good, all loving. It's like, there's no way, if there is this God, there's no way that this all loving, like there is both. So, I mean, they describe it as, you know, heaven and hell, God and the devil, whatever. But it's like, no, this is one entity that's very balanced between both good energy and bad energy. Or maybe it's two gods on each end of the spectrum battling with each other. Maybe, I don't know. But I like I've always, cause it's like, there has to be some reason for like the evils that exist in the world. Right. And so like, that's where I like, so to me, what you just said makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So I guess I'll tell the full story.
Let's get it.
So for the sake of time, I'll try to keep it like shorter.
Yeah, Spark Notes.
But yeah, so I started working for a psychic medium, and I started to feel like really drained when I was around her. At first, it was great, and then
I don't think anybody thinks that's too far-fetched. We've all been around people who drain our fucking energy.
Yeah, and then the concept of like energy vampires kept coming up in her classes, and I was like,
"You are one, or you might be one."
You are, yeah. I was like, "She's one," and then I ended up having to like break ties with her.
Okay.
Which I actually like. I contacted 3 people who I know are very intuitive. One being one of my previous teachers.
Sure.
And I was like, all right, so question for you. Don't overthink it. Gut reaction. Do you think I should continue working with this person? All 3 of them said no.
Right.
They were like, and there was no reason not to. Like, it seemed really successful. We were like trying to get her onto like a reality TV show. She wanted me on as her producer. And it was like really promising. But everyone was like, no, I don't get a good feeling about it. And I'm like, neither do I. So I cut ties, and it was like a breakup. Like, I've never felt something so strong where I was like, what the fuck is going on? Because she was like pissed at me.
Yeah.
And
shots of the ego a little bit.
Yes, because like, but what happened? So I'll say this. Like I said to her, I was like, because she and I would read for each other, and not to like toot my own horn, but I'm very good, and so is she.
This guy.
She was very good, but I told her, I was like, you hold everything way too close to you, and it's like that concept of like when you hold a butterfly. Like, if you hold it too tightly, you're going to kill it.
Gotcha.
So she would hold everything so tightly that she would ultimately always kill it.
Right. Do you think that's like in like a protective way, that it's like putting up walls, like that kind of concept?
Yeah. So like she had like a very traumatic upbringing that she did not heal.
Ah, well,
but she's walking around trying to heal other people. And I'm like, Mama, you need to heal you before you can go further in this.
Yeah.
But she got mad at me because I said that.
Right.
And I'm like, I know I'm correct because I'm reading your energy.
Yeah.
And it's not easy to reflect on that and to process really difficult trauma. And especially as someone, she's like a single mom, and like, so her independence and like doing her own thing her way was like huge for her. So like to hear that like she's not doing something correctly is the way she perceived it was like a huge shot to her ego, and she got really mad at me. But I was like, it's not a judgment. It's like it's a
read of what's going on. Yeah.
Yeah, like you're gonna destroy anything that you hold dear because it's too. You can't. You don't leave room for. I don't know how to explain it. She didn't leave room for connection to happen.
Right. That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
So anyway, so it was like a breakup when I stopped working for her, and like I would see her name and I would feel like fire in my body, like my body would get super hot and like respond to it, and I'm like, I don't feel this way. Like we weren't dating, like we weren't, but it felt like a breakup. It was super weird. And then, so I went London, back to Buffalo, worked for her for several months, quit, and kind of like fell into like a depression because I was like, I don't know what else to do. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with my life. Just finished a master's degree and like was gonna go for a PhD but didn't. So it was like an iffy time for me. And then maybe like 6 months later, my mom was at a psychic party at her friend's, and she was talking to this psychic and different lady, and my mom always asks about her kids, as moms do, and the lady was like, oh, your son's like super intuitive, and like, does he do this kind of work? And she was like, yeah, he used to work for this woman. And she goes, oh, have your son call me.
Whoa.
And
all right.
My mom was like, what? And so she came home, told me, and I was like, I'm not getting involved with any more psychics, and like, this is too much.
Right. So like when you had this like poor experience with this person, did it like put a bad taste in your mouth of the entire field? Yeah.
It did.
I can imagine. Yeah.
And like I said earlier, like that's my whole life. That's how I connect to this world, is through connection and like being an empath and being a psychic medium. And I had this like distaste for just the whole community, and I like shut myself out from it, which was a point in my life where my spiral stopped, where I stopped living. I stopped connecting with who I am at my core because of a bad experience. So I can also talk about this and help other people through it, because I've been there, you know.
Right, totally.
I know what it feels like, and I know what people were telling me at that time. And like my mentors were like, David, you're not living. And I was like, what do you mean I'm not living? I'm like doing things, I'm trying to make things happen. But energetically, I wasn't connecting with the world around me. I was just kind of going through the motions. You're like in this like gray space. Well, I was. So, but anyway, so I end up meeting with this woman because she like was persistent. She's like, hey, I'm not even going to charge you. Just like, please come see me for a energy healing. I just need to help you. And she like ended up on like.
So she knew
this other
was.
woman. Yeah. And I went for a Reiki healing with her. And the whole time when like I was in a chair and had my eyes closed, and she's just like rebalancing my system, and I'm seeing the colors red and green, and then in like with my eyes closed I see colors.
Right.
And then afterwards she's like, yeah, you really need to, we're working a lot on your root chakra and your heart chakra, which the corresponding colors are red and green. And I was like, oh, this woman is like for real. Because like there's 7 colors that I could see, and or 8, and she got the 2 right, you know, where it was like, okay, this is valid. And then afterwards she was like, how you feeling? I was like, like good. And then I started talking about this woman. Well, we started talking about her, and she was like, yeah, she's like, I've had to help a lot of people who have worked with her because she sucks the energy out of people and tries to manipulate them. And she's a narcissist, and she's a narcissist who also, and I told her, I was like, yeah, she also does like black magic, and which I never believed in.
Right.
I was like, okay, yeah, like you know some witches and you do black magic.
Sure.
Like she had mentioned it. And I told this woman, she was like, oh shit, really? She's like, I didn't know she was actually doing that stuff. And I was like, yes.
Yeah, right.
What?
Yeah.
And then she's like, okay, honey, like stand up. I'm going to put holy water on you. And I was like, what? And
we just made the exact same face.
What's going on? And then so she just like put her hand, like holy water on her hands, put it on my back. And what she was doing was removing
bad energy or something,
negative energetic attachment, which like this is called the mouth of God, the back of your neck.
Is that why mine's so fucked up?
But it's where you can take in energy and hold energy, is at this point of your spine, like right below the brain. And there's actually some cultures and communities where they actually keep their necks covered because it's an entry point for energy.
Interesting.
But so anyway, she does this. She puts her hands on the back of my neck and just laid them there. And I was like, okay. And then I sat down, and she's like, how are you feeling? And I'm like, I feel fine. Then I was like, oh my God. Like it felt like I had just had like a deep tissue massage. I was like, oh my God, my back is on fire right now. And she was like, yeah, I had to like rip off a bunch of like negative energy that this woman put on you.
She's like, I used battery acid on your neck.
Yeah. It wasn't holy water. It was actually acid. Yeah. No, but like it was insane. And I was like, that made me a believer in the power of negativity.
Right.
Intentionally placed negativity, which even like we do that to ourselves.
Totally.
We intentionally place negativity, like I can't do this, or I should have, or whatever. And that like thoughts are energy, and intention is energy. If you put that in your body and tell yourself that, it's gonna stay there, you know. Totally. It's gonna be there.
What's funny is on that, and you had mentioned something earlier about like naming things, putting a name to things, and that was like one of the biggest things of advice I ever received was that, you know, the voice in my head that hates me, that I always refer to it as, of like giving it an actual name. To know, and like there was nothing that helped me more like in my journey of growth than that, of like, and I talked about a few weeks ago on the pod about the idea of like, you know, the philosophical whatever it is about the story of the good wolf and the bad wolf. You know, like you feed the good wolf, good you know, kind of thing. So falls into the same realm. But like once I realized that I was like, oh my god, there is this voice in my head that is like naming it and like picturing it as like an actual entity instead of just like random thoughts that come up. It's like, no, that's one thing that is just of negative, that's just like constantly tearing me down, telling me I'm not good enough, telling me I can't do these things, that all, you know, stem from things that grew up when I grew up in my childhood. And we were talking about that off camera as well. As like, you know, growing up not feeling like I really fit in really well, and like feeling different and like all these things, and thinking that different was a bad thing, you know. It's like, and once I could name all of that and call it as one thing, that I could start to battle it, you know. And it made it much more a maintainable goal, or achievable goal, I guess.
For sure. And you can even like write letters to that, whatever.
I usually just tell them to go fuck itself, but
you can, whatever you need to do.
I'm a guy that's like, when I'm panicking, I go to the bathroom and I give myself a pep talk in the mirror. That's like my go. Like I have like
think of
splash some cold water in my face and be like, bro, fucking chill out. Like,
makes me think of the movie Wanderlust, when Paul Rudd's in the mirror.
I'm gonna put my dick in.
Yes.
That's exactly what I do.
Fuck ya.
Yeah.
I'm gonna fuck you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put it up in your vag. And then the guy walks in. He's like, "Hey, you all right?" He's like, "Hey."
Yeah, that's me. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy how it all everything makes sense. I feel like so many people like trap themselves into like this closed-mindedness, you know what I mean? Like, set yourselves free, man.
Yeah,
enjoy life.
There's a whole science to it.
That's what I'm saying. Like, there is tangible evidence of these things like existing, and it's like, I go off like the more than any other religion, you know, like, I don't know. I mean, the whole basis of like religion and spirituality all came from like human beings trying to come to terms with their own mortality, right? Because we as human beings have these gigantic egos, you know, which some believe are because of the stoned ape theory, if you've ever heard that.
No.
The stoned ape theory, it's very funny. I admittedly heard about it on the Joe Rogan Experience years ago, pre-N-word.
Yikes.
No, but it's a legit like scientific theory. The stoned ape theory that some like species of cavemen along the way, like in the early points of evolution, you know, the rainforests, something with the rainforest had all like, you know, a bunch of things had shifted in the world with the rainforest that caused mushrooms to grow in like cow shit or something, and these cavemen, you know, were trying things and eating them and seeing if they were edible, because there's new food sources growing, so they were eating these mushrooms and like by the handful, and realizing that they could digest them and everything, but it was also making them fucking trip balls, and that is what like led to like the super like super fast process of evolution that humans went through, because it's like we evolved extremely fast compared to every other species, you know. And like, why did that happen? And this theory is that it was because of like cavemen eating psychedelic mushrooms, like, and causing them to evolve at a much faster rate, because they were able to like connect with the universe and tap in. It's almost like, and I always said like psychedelics are like cheat codes. You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, it's like entering cheat codes into entering like what's actually out there, you know?
Yeah, and in energy we call that downloads and upgrades. Like, you're upgrading your system
1000%.
On a molecular level.
1000%, yeah.
Creating connections where there previously weren't, or like, Speaking of tripping balls.
All right, let's get into it.
So I did DMT.
Whoa, jealous.
It was interesting.
Yeah. Speaking of Joe Rogan.
Yeah. So I'm not gonna say what I did, because it just, anyway. But it was pretty powerful, and I was called to it. So it was something like, and people had said, so that I was working at a place in New York that was a wellness club, holistic wellness club. And one of the acupuncturists there was telling the girls, some of the girls that I worked with, about the shaman that he knew. And like, this guy was awesome. I loved him. And he was like, the girls were interested in doing it. They had like done mushrooms and like different stuff like that. And they're like, but we've never done this. And they went, so 3 girls went to the Hamptons to do it. And they all had different experiences. The one girl had this really insane, like, whoa, I need to change my whole life. I saw entities that are guiding me towards a deeper connection with this world and like health and wellness and like energy work. And she had like a really prolific experience. The other girl was like this like gorgeous model who was like, I just became light and love. And then she's like, there were streets over from the ocean. She's like, I just got naked and I went in the ocean and I became one with the earth. And I was like, of course you did, you fucking gorgeous, perfect human. And then the third girl was like,
I like that you're telling this like it's like a fable, you know?
It's
there were 3 people.
Yeah.
One was a gorgeous model.
Yeah. And that's so funny. And then the third girl, it sounds fake, but it's real. And the third girl was like this very anxious, like anxious, but with huge potential.
Yeah.
Screamed and cried the entire time.
Sounds like me.
But whatever happens is what you need, and it's what's best for your own development and your own upgrade, I guess, if you want to think of it that way. Going back to like the mushrooms and how you advance with cheat codes, you know?
Yeah.
So this girl had to get rid of a lot of shit that she was holding on to. And she would have nightmares after, and like it was kind of hectic, but like now total 180. She's like so at peace with herself. She's happy. She's living her best life. She actually did it again a second time and
had a way better experience.
Totally different experience. She was like, I was on a beach. I met my spirit guide. My spirit guide was like, girl, what are you doing? You already have all the answers. And she was like, yeah. And then that was pretty much it.
Yeah, shit's fascinating.
So
drugs are cool.
Some are cool.
Well, the ones that like exist naturally in our brains, like DMT or like, you know, mushrooms that grow out of the ground. Or that's all I stick with. I'm not gonna do, you know.
Yeah,
that's what I've always said is like I just like doing stuff that grows out of the ground. You know?
Yeah. And there's a reason that it's there.
Yeah.
And that's what's like the cool thing about like.
And there's medicinal factors to all of it.
Yes.
Because the universe provides.
Yes. And anyway, so these girls did that, and I was like, I want to do this, because I was like, I want to deepen my connection with being a psychic medium. And I was like, also my goal was like, where does this come from?
Yeah.
Like, how can I like?
Who are we?
Yeah, I'm like, why can I communicate with like people who have passed away? Why can I do that?
Yeah.
And like, why can I like sit with someone and feel their feelings and like tell them the biggest obstacle in their life without them telling me anything? Like, I'm like, how does that happen?
Right.
And so that was my goal with it. And I remember coming back to Buffalo in between the time that I did it and learned about it. I was telling my parents about it. And my dad like doesn't even like CBD to be in the house. Like he's like, I don't know, like this just sounds crazy, and they never should have done that, and those girls they could have died,
rotted their brains.
Yeah. And so I was like, all right, cool, I'm probably gonna do it. And he was like, no, you shouldn't do it.
Wow, telling your parents you're about to do psychedelics is a crazy move.
Yeah, and but what's interesting is that like a couple weeks later, when I was planning to go do it, I was going with another friend from work who had previous psychedelic experience and was an energy worker and cool chick. So my dad called me and he was like, I had a dream that I want to tell you about. And I'm like, okay. He's like, so in this dream, again, same dad who doesn't even like CBD in the house, calls me and says he has this dream. He's like, so I was walking toward there, I saw a cave and there's smoke coming out of it. So I like walked up, I went into the cave and I saw a bunch of like Indian men dancing around a fire, smoking things, and they were having an amazing time. And he's like, I just had this sense of peace, and I felt like I had to give a message to you that when you do this thing, it's going to be incredibly healing for you. And I was like, okay. And I got off the phone. I was like, my dad just told me to do like the world's most powerful like psychedelic drug, and
Endorsed it.
It was like,
because of a dream he had.
Yeah, girl, go ahead. And I was like, I have to do this. Like I felt so.
South Buffalo Irish Catholic dad.
Yes, if a South Buffalo Irish Catholic dad in his 60s has probably never done drugs besides like weed when he was like 17.
Yeah, my dad's never even smoked weed.
But yeah, like was like, yeah, go ahead, go do it, have fun, be safe, wear a condom, like. And so I was like, I have to do this. There's something on the other side of this.
Okay.
And oh my god, this is so long. But like I said, I'm a talker. I love talking.
I know, it's fine. Everything's going good. If people are still listening at this point, I mean, they know what they signed up for, you know?
Right.
So let's fucking get into it.
So then, yeah, so I go to the Hamptons. It's like this gorgeous place that the shaman, who's the former psychiatrist, and he like worked with a mentor and like learned about this, and that offers different services, psychedelic services. And then so we're on this like gorgeous, basically like horse farm that's a couple streets over from the beach in the Hamptons, and we're under this tree, which like the one root comes out of it and it looks like Ganesha, like the Indian goddess.
Okay.
And
I've heard of.
She is like associated with this one medicine. So it's just kind of crazy. He's like, yeah, Ganesha is like growing out of the tree that we do the shamanic experience under. And I'm like, okay, cool. That's nice. Like, whatever. So my friend goes first. And she's like, well, I'm more experienced. And they're like, have you ever done anything? I'm like, no.
Yeah. I smoked weed once in high school.
Yeah. No, I waited until I went to Amsterdam to smoke weed, actually.
Really?
Yeah. I was like, I need to do it where it's legal. And then...
You fucking nerd.
Right. But here I am doing this. And then my friend goes, and like, I thought she died. Like, she was like flailing on the ground, like making like these crazy noises. And I was just like...
So you haven't done it
I haven't done it yet.
And you're watching this.
She's just flailing on the ground, like squealing.
And you're like, I definitely don't want to do this.
No.
Okay.
So there was the shaman, his assistant, and a psychic medium energy channeler who were there. Energy channeler comes over to me. He's like, so whatever's happening to her is whatever's meant to happen to her. And I was like, yeah, I understand that, and I respect that. And he's like, are you nervous? And I was like, of course I'm nervous. That's kind of unsettling. It literally looks like she's dying right now.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, but... And I go, but I know that's what she needs to go through and process to get to the other side of something. And I'm like, and I respect that. And I know, and he was like, yes. And everyone's experience is different. So I was like, yeah. They're like, so you're ready to do it? And I was like, I guess so. So you get on your hands and knees, and you're on your knees and you're like holding this pipe, and the shaman lights it for you. You say an intention prayer, and you inhale. And oh wait, the best part was like when my friend did it. She's like on her hands and knees, and there's a blanket, and she like inhales, and then she goes, whoa. Falls backwards, and then starts flailing around, and I was like,
right, terrifying.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm on my hands, like I'm on my knees, like with the pipe, and I inhale, and I fall backwards. Everything goes black, and I saw, like, I don't remember this exact sequence, but this is how I remember it. I saw like a mandala, like an orange mandala of like this thing just like unfolding. Like it starts in the center, and then it just like a kaleidoscope.
Okay.
Unfolding on itself, and I was like, what is going on? Like, I remember I could hear my thoughts when this was happening.
Sounds kind of sick.
It was. And then I remember being in like an iridescent like blue tube which like I've seen things on TikTok when people like describe like a near-death experience. It's always the iridescent blue tube, and I had never seen that before until I like saw TikTok.
I don't even know what that means.
It's like, so
you're saying a lot of words that I'm like, I'm just gonna roll with it.
I don't make any sense.
I'm also kind of dumb, so
no. So have you seen Thor?
Yeah.
Like the Rainbow Bridge?
Yeah.
Where it's like that like iridescent like portal to their world.
Yeah.
It's like that, but
okay.
blue. That's basically what I was in. So I'm like traveling through a tube.
Okay.
And I was like, what? I'm like in a tube? I don't know what's going on. But I'm like unconscious for this. And then I remember seeing like almost like a old TV like connection coming in.
Yeah, a little staticky.
It was a little staticky, and there were like people, and I could see ground, and I was like, what is that? And then all of a sudden, crystal clear comes in. I'm in a different place. The first thing I saw was palm trees. So like I'm under a tree, and my physical body is under a tree in real life, but like wherever I went was palm trees.
Were you in New York when this happened?
The Hamptons.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Oh, goddamn, hey.
So I was outside, and so I saw palm trees, and I was like, what the fuck? Because it was like super HD, like clearest, crispest, just like colors and imagery. And then I like looked forward, and there was like just the greenest grass I've ever seen in my life. And there was like hills, and it was different from the place that I actually was, but it was also the same. Like it looked different, but it was the same layout. And then like the sky was green at the bottom, at the horizon, and then it went up to blue, up to purple, up to black. And it was all contained inside like a dome, like a clear dome.
Oh, the flat earthers will love this episode.
And I was like, what is this? It was just like the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen in my life. And I just like, I remember saying, I get it now. Because I was like, this is where everything comes from, and this is where everything goes to, and this exists at the same time as like our present reality.
So that sounds extremely like just a much more like intense version of like my experience tripping on mushrooms.
Yeah.
Like tripping on mushrooms, you don't really see anything. You just kind of like sense things. You just feel things.
Yeah.
But like I came to kind of the same conclusion of like, like everything is connected. There's a balance to everything. This is where we came from. This is where we're going. These kinds of things. But it's like so hard to process it and put it into words and explain what's going through your brain because you've never tapped into this part of yourself before. You know what I mean?
It's it's complete peace.
It's
like
amazing.
Complete feeling of connection, and just like, and then the next thing that happened was I looked behind me, and there was a guy sitting like cross-legged, and I just knew him to be Jesus. And I mean, obviously like grew up Catholic, but like I've never been religious.
Sure.
And I've never really looked into it. And it was Jesus as he should be, like just like a Middle Eastern guy with like hair like to his shoulders, beard, like in his early 30s.
Not a six-pack.
Not sexy white Jesus.
Yeah. Jewish guy in Israel.
Yeah, but he was kind of hot.
Nice.
But I saw him, and he like intuitively I knew it was Jesus.
Right.
And he kind of gestured to me. He was like, yeah, this is what exists, and this is like this is the place. And I've told this story to people, and like they've been like, oh, you like saw like the fifth dimension, whereas like a different dimensional reality.
Okay.
That's based in love. So, and that's where like ascended masters reside, which is like people who have come to Earth to teach us lessons and to further humanity in its development.
Right. And what I was going to say is, do you think it's possible that Jesus or like Muhammad, these prophets that we know about were possibly these people that their messages were misinterpreted?
Yes. So I do believe that they existed. I do. And I think that these people had messages, and yes, people did have it misinterpreted, and some people did it purposefully. Like the Roman Empire took the Bible and manipulated it for control. And So like the messages got mixed up on purpose. So because they were like, we can't tell people the secret to life because then like everyone will have access to what we have access to. So they hid the message, but like kept it for themselves. So it's like the girls who get it, and the girls who don't. And the old-timey version of that. So, but that's actually like one of my mentors who I initially learned like tarot from, which this sounds insane and made up, but until you interact with something.
Again, the
and
people
have
who
access,
have made it this far, like, we've kept your interest this far. We might as well get a little crazier, you know?
Yeah. So he interpreted the prophecy of the Bible. And this gave me a totally different perspective on religion, especially growing up Catholic, where it's like, I would previously call myself a recovering Catholic. like I'm still healing from growing up Catholic.
Yeah.
But what he essentially said the same thing. Like, this is where I learned about that. He said the Roman Empire hid the messages through imagery and symbols, and he interpreted that prophecy to say what Jesus's teachings actually were, what the actual point of the Bible is to teach people how to elevate their consciousness and go from a reality that's dark to light. So to improve, to grow
through
into
a message of love as well, right?
Yes. At the end of the day, if we could only say one thing, it would be love.
Right.
Because that's ultimately what we're moving towards, and that's what like the fifth dimension is. And people talk about like ascension and like all that stuff, and it sounds insane, but then once you put the puzzle pieces together, it just makes so much sense. And you're like,
couldn't agree more. And I've talked about this on the podcast too, that I always talk about the idea of leveling up. Like I always, like, as I have like grown, like there's always been like, especially within the last few years of like, you know, there's the science behind like when you're 25 is when your brain fully develops, right? So like as I'm 27 now, within the last 2 years, like the amount that like I've realized, and like you had these like aha moments of like, oh, that's what that is, you know what I mean? And that's what I consider leveling up. And then you go forward through life with that new elevation, you know?
Yeah,
and like, so I
spiral.
like, right, there we go. We're back to the spiral, full circle. No, but I like that idea of like, you know, the idea of like trying to reach nirvana, so to speak, you know, of like leveling up until you reach nirvana and get released into the universe, I guess.
Yeah.
Or the fifth dimension, whatever. I like to think that like death is probably like the ending of 2001: A Space Odyssey. You ever see that movie?
No.
Highly recommended. If you want a movie that you like, Stanley Kubrick movie, right? Legendary director. This is where I'm switching gears here to my movie nerdness here, but Stanley Kubrick made this movie with no intention other than to make people feel something. Like there's really no, like, you interpret it how you want to, but he's like, I just wanted to create visuals on a screen that make you feel anything, you know, just like feel moved. So it's like, but there's this whole underlying philosophy of like existence going on through the, you know, it's a movie about going to space before we even went to space. The movie came out in 1961. So, and the ending of the movie when he like reaches like almost, I don't remember exactly what it is, but like kind of like he hits a black hole, and like the visuals that happen on the screen are crazy, and like the things that they're showing while he's going through it are nuts. And like everything I've learned about life, I'm like, I think that's the closest visual adaptation we have to like what that's like. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I mean, the visuals I saw when I took DMT were like, I was like, if this is where you go when you die, like, I can't wait.
Right.
I was like, kill me now.
Yeah.
Like, not really, but.
Right. No, I feel that. Yeah.
But I'm like, what? There's just this beautiful continuation of something different.
Yeah.
And like, and that's something I took away from it too, is like, we continue on in a different form.
Totally.
And there are different places that different people go. And like, even like with spirits, some spirits stay earthbound.
Right. And that,
some go into another life.
Yeah.
And I truly believe like time is not even like linear as we experience it.
Right.
So like what I mean by that is like I could die today and wake up in 1400,
Right.
you know, in a totally different life.
Yeah.
Because like, who's to say that can't, like,
yeah, I agree. I think it would be pretty narrow-minded to think that everything is moving on one linear trajectory, especially with the idea that we know of like multiple like the multiverse theory and like string theory and like those kinds of things. Like, I think it'd be pretty narrow, like to at least believe like some of the basis of everything that we've talked about today, and then be like, but there's only one linear timeline. Like, yeah, of course. Yeah.
And that's where it comes back to that spiral, because it's like you keep experiencing things over and over again.
Right.
And I think
the idea of history repeating itself. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I think maybe I would go back in time and know more.
Right.
And be able to improve on it.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's something I haven't totally like grasped.
Yeah.
But,
well, I do. I mean, either way, like this whole idea of like, you know, afterlife and stuff like that, like, and I talked about it a little bit before, like, you know, where I have identified as an atheist at one point, like, and the idea of religion being, or in spirituality, all things for us to like deal with our own mortality and stuff, which, you know, our mortality is tied just to like more of our ego, right? Where like you have the idea of like the body and the soul and the connection of the two. And like, so that's part of like your body that's like scared of mortality because your body's going to go, you know? Yeah. But either way, like, even if all of it sounds crazy and none of it's real, at least it like, it's not harming anybody. And it's a way to bring peace to like dealing with that mortality. You know what I mean? And I think that is a beautiful thing in and of itself.
Yeah, for sure. And to create meaning and connection, like you said, it's like that's just like the most important. So this gets into another thing. Well, so I'll finish my little trip. Because then there's more. We might need a part 2.
We might. Maybe we will. Maybe we'll do another one at another time, because we're coming up on hitting the 2-hour marker.
Yeah, because anyway, so I saw that, and then I was back. So I saw Jesus, and like he gestured for me to look around, and I had 360-degree vision, which confused the fuck out of me.
Right.
Because I was like, what the? And then I was back in my body. Like, I saw my normal surroundings, and I felt like high as fuck.
Yeah.
And the shaman was like, do you need more? And I was like, yes. Like, send me back to wherever I just was, which is different from where I am now, feeling sick to my stomach.
Right.
And he's like, all right. So he brings the pipe over, and he was like, brought it up to my mouth, and I was inhaling, and he goes, slow, 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 slow. Anxiety.
Oh no.
And then everything just faded to gray, and I was just like in this like weird gray, just like nothingness.
Damn.
And I was like, whoa, this is different.
Yeah.
This isn't the same thing. And I was like, oh my
stuck
god,
in purgatory.
Yeah, it was weird. I was like, oh my god, I just died. I was like, I did this drug and I died. I shouldn't have done this. And all the anxious thoughts came in.
Yeah.
And I was just like, it was me, the shaman, and my friend, and the shaman's dog were like in this gray nothingness, and we were just kind of like,
sounds like a music festival.
Yeah. And
or something you would see at one.
And then we were all going shh, 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 like trying to like console each other.
Sure.
In this nothingness. And I was like, this is weird. I'm like, I just broke the world. I broke the universe. I did it. It's my fault. And then I was like, wait, this doesn't make any sense. I can hear my own thoughts. That means I can get out of this. And so I came back into the sensation of like being in my body I said, exist. I was like, exist, exist, exist. And then I was back feeling my physical body. And when I look back on it now, I'm like, did I die for a second? I don't really know. But I was back in my body, and then I was like breathing like super deeply, and kind of like holotropic breathing, if you know what that is. It's a type of like spiritual breath work where you're doing deep breathing, and it takes you into like altered consciousness states.
You know, I've actually heard Russell Brand talk about that.
Probably, yes. Yeah. Yes. Because he got really deep into like kind of holistic.
He did, yeah.
Healing.
Through the pandemic, I actually listened to his podcast like a lot. and learned a lot about what he had to say. But then he just, I don't know, after a while he stopped talking about that and just got into how like Dr. Fauci was trying to burn the world and stuff. And I'm just like, I don't want to listen to this fucking guy anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I haven't listened to him since I was in London, I think. So I know he's gone down some interesting.
Yeah, he's like his full trying to unveil government conspiracies, and I'm like, I liked when you would talk about spirituality and like holistic and like meditation and stuff. He doesn't. Yeah, I don't know. So I stopped. Yeah. I fell off the Russell Brand train. I really enjoyed that stuff that he did, though.
Yeah, interesting dude. Yeah, for sure. Good and bad. But where was I? Oh yeah. So I was back in my body and breathing really deeply, and breath work is so important. I learned that in that experience where I was like, wow, life is about how we breathe, and I've learned so much about breath work since then.
I know that through anxiety. That was like the first thing anybody ever told me. Like I started experiencing anxiety when I was like 5 or 6. I was having like actual like panic attacks. And I remember that was like the first thing that I was taught to try was like, trying to focus on your breathing, control your breath. Like, and that is like, that's gotten me out of so many anxiety attacks. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Alternate nostril breathing is like the best thing I've ever experienced.
So
for
like
plugging
panic. One up, you're saying?
So you like plug one side of your nose, inhale for like 7 seconds, like, and then you hold it for 7.
Yeah. And you exhale through the other nostril for 7. Crazy. I'll have to try that. I'm always I do weird. In through the nose, out through the mouth, but usually in for 6, hold for 6, out for 6.
Yeah, but
well, maybe 666 is a bad way to do that, but
666. Yeah, and then all of a sudden a demon appears on your floor, and you're like, wait.
I'm even more anxious.
Yeah. That didn't help at all. So that's how I met my ex, actually. No, I'm just kidding. Summoned a demon. So it's like you plug your nose and then you switch nostrils to exhale.
Right.
And it does something with your left and right brain where it balances the sides of your body and it calms your nervous system.
I like that. I'll definitely give that a go.
It's amazing. Actually, I learned about it from Hillary Clinton because that was like... Shout out Hillary Clinton if you're listening.
It's the first time and hopefully the last time that Hillary Clinton gets a shout out on this podcast.
But that's how she dealt with stress.
Yeah.
That's one of the ways she deals with stress is alternate nostril breathing. And I was like,
that
wait.
And drone strikes.
Yeah. And trying to be ultimate commander of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some of us just like do breathing. Some of us try to like I don't know.
Hide our emails or something.
Whatever.
Yeah. I like that we went for the same thing. Though. It's good. Do you know? Not to cut you off, but do you have an experience or know anything about ayahuasca? I've heard a lot about that.
Yeah.
I just hear like for some reason comedians talk about it all the time. Like comedians are very much Neil Brennan specifically. He's one of my favorite comics, and he talks about he's done ayahuasca a bunch, and like he's gotten a bunch of people on it, and everybody talks really highly of it. Have you ever done it?
I've never done ayahuasca. What I did was like supercharged ayahuasca.
Okay.
I'll just name it. It's called Bufo. It's it comes from a toad, so it's like licking.
Oh, yeah. I've heard of this. Yeah.
Don't do it unless you're with a shaman.
Right.
And
well, that's like.
Yeah.
That's what these guys said. They're like, you wouldn't even think of doing it without a shaman. Yeah.
Yeah, and because it's sacred medicine. It's sacred medicine is what it is. It's not to be fucked with. It's not a party drug.
Yeah.
Like, it's something that changes your system, and it's to be respected. But yes, ayahuasca, because ayahuasca is like a whole journey. And I was turned off by ayahuasca because I was like, you can shit your pants or like you throw up a bunch.
That's what I hear of the throwing up thing a lot. Yeah. And I hate throwing up. Like, it's like, I have a weird thing where like, throwing up for me is a very painful experience. Yeah. I literally have not thrown up in like 6 years.
Yeah.
Because I'm like very like good at making sure I like do not get sick. Like, so I don't drink a lot. Like that can like I just avoid because it is a very for some reason I got something fucking weird going on.
Yeah, some people just don't. I mean, no one. I don't think.
Right. There's nobody that's like that was great, but but I think it's
throwing up.
No, but for me it's literally like it is a extremely painful experience and I avoid it at all costs. So.
Yeah, so that turned me off to Aya because I was like, like cool, but like I don't want to shit my pants.
Right.
And I don't want to be in a trip for 3 hours.
Yeah.
So
see, mushrooms is like a 6-hour thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Damn. So.
Well, I mean, if you like eat, I mean, I usually eat like an eighth, so you could probably do less than that. But
well, because you're.
It's also like not like the first and the last hour are pretty tame.
Yeah.
You know, and there's like a few hours in between that are pretty intense.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like mushrooms is not like you're not like in another world. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you fully exist in the world that we're living in. You just are like thinking about shit differently. You know, like I've done
fair.
mushrooms and I've gone out on Alan. Like
that's fair. No, because like what I did, I was unconscious.
Yeah. Right.
For
right,
like half hour, 45 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's way more intense.
Yeah. So, but you don't purge, and I was like, yeah, I'll go do that. Cause I don't want to shit my pants.
Right.
So, but I've heard great things about ayahuasca, and it does similar things where it's if I'm not mistaken, it's also DMT.
That makes sense because like what I've heard about it, the way you described your DMT experience, I was like, this sounds very similar to ayahuasca.
Yeah, it's similar, but different because ayahuasca comes from a root, and that's grandmother medicine.
Okay.
Grandmother Aya is like what, or they call it, the slang is like grandmother, versus Bufo. What do they call Bufo? I think it's more of like I forget what it is. I don't know. But yeah, so that it's a different kind of medicine though, is what it is essentially. And but you can get similar results. Yeah, I remember Chelsea Handler did it on her show.
No way, really?
Yeah. And she's like, yeah, it changed her life.
Yeah.
And she was like, yeah, I remember like calling my sister and being like, I just love you.
Right.
And like, she was like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah,
and she was like, fuck you, bitch. Like, I'm just had this wonderful experience. I'm trying to tell you I love you. And you're just like not feeling my vibes. She was like, God damn it. She's like, my sister ruined it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's cool. It like you said, it changes your perspective, and it like I felt the most connected to life and love, and like if you can feel connected to connection, that's what there's no words for it.
Right.
You're just like you're in complete flow with the universe. This sounds so cliche, but like I was like, life is beautiful.
Yeah.
Like
that's exactly, dude. If you do mushrooms and like are in peak trip and watch a sunset, you are going to cry.
Yeah.
Guaranteed. Because it's like, that's the exact experience you feel. It's just like, oh my God, life is fucking amazing. Yeah. And that's why, I mean, when you like, that's why they talk about microdosing mushrooms as like, like therapeutic medicine for people with depression and PTSD and anxiety and stuff like that. So and it totally makes sense because it does make you like just kind of like, again, back to the idea of like touching grass that we talked about earlier. But that might have been in between while we were fixing stuff. But the idea of just like coming back down to earth and like getting like just connected and going through it, and it's great.
And I know like some therapists. Do you remember the Horrigans from St. Martin's?
Yeah.
So Mariah and Karen, they're actually all social workers, but Mariah was working in Oregon, and a girl that was a patient of hers had like severe trauma, did mushrooms once, came back and was like, I'm good.
Yeah.
And she was like, what do you mean? She's like, I did mushrooms. I just don't have feelings towards this thing anymore. I processed it, I cried, and I don't feel connected to it anymore, and I'm good. And she's like,
sick.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
I mean, I was taking Lexapro every day for a year, and it was great at first. You know what I mean? Like it was because I was at a point where I was like, I don't know what else to do. You know what I mean? Like I'm freaking out every day. Life feels hopeless. Yada yada yada. So I get on Lexapro, and my dosage goes up over time, and And it was great. Like I absolutely needed it. And my therapist talks about it. He's like, medication is a great like starting point when you feel when you can't do other things, because it's like made this amazing analogy that he's like taking the anti-anxiety meds or whatever it is like helps clear the cobwebs in the attic that is your brain. Yeah. And he's like, and now we can start sifting through the boxes to figure out how we got here. You know what I mean? And so like, so it was great. But then I started microdosing mushrooms instead and weeded myself off Lexapro, and I've been like totally good. But my point was like, I skipped a part there where that Lexapro was great, but it got to a point where I felt just like numb. You know, where it was like my entire emotional spectrum. Like, sure, I didn't feel as sad all the time, but then I didn't feel happy either. Like, I was just like existing, and it was just like I didn't like it at all, you know? And when like the depression would sneak its way through, it would hit really hard. And it was like, I didn't want to do that, you know? So, I ended up weeding myself off of it at my doctor's orders. I didn't just, you know, like I called my doctor and was like, hey, I want to do this. And he was like, totally, here's how to do it, whatever. Weeded myself off, started microdosing mushrooms pretty regularly, and like it's been great, you know. And then obviously, as we talked about before, like actually like taking action to like work on things. I go to therapy once a month, all these things, and things are good.
And doing things like this, like getting out of your comfort zone.
1,000%. It is crazy. Going back to the point of the voice in my head that hates me, right? Because I wanted to start a podcast for so long because I love podcasts. I think they're incredible. But I see anybody put something on Twitter that's just like straight white guys doing podcasts, or like just like the meme of it. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Like just I'm just falling into this stereotype, this meme of like starting a podcast, whatever. And like, oh my God, there's so many podcasts. There's too many. Stop starting them, all this stuff. And like, so I would see that all the time and I'd be like, oh, okay, I shouldn't start one. You know what I mean? And I'm like, who the fuck are these people? You know what I mean? Like, I love listening to podcasts all day. And I have like certain perspective on things and certain conversations I like having that I think some people might find interesting. And it turns out they do. Yeah. Once I started it, you know what I mean? Like people like told me how much they love it. And I've got people who listen every week, and, you know, but yeah, having to get over that hump of caring what people think and like getting outside of my comfort zone. And then the reward of it is fantastic, and you grow a little bit and go, oh yeah, see what happens when you tell people to fuck off, you know, and like just do what you love, you know, kind of thing. So
we make it way more complicated than it needs to be.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's like go towards what's good.
Right.
And leave space. I always tell people, I'm like, give yourself more grace.
Totally.
Just give yourself more grace. Give yourself more space to like process things.
Totally.
And to, like, don't be afraid to be wrong. And like I had this one professor who said, he was like a really prolific sociologist, and he was like, I know because I don't know. He's like, I'm not afraid to say I don't know.
1,000%. Yep.
And that's why he became so good at what he did, and so good at understanding people and just like society, and like looking at bigger picture theory.
Yeah. This is all going back to like us, like saying like, ask questions, you know what I mean? Always ask questions, always, and say if they admit when you don't know stuff. And that was a big thing for me too when I got there, because I think like people definitely have a perception of me that like I'm a know-it-all, and I reject that notion so much, because it's like I don't claim to know everything. It's like, but the stuff I do know, I'm going to tell you that I know it, and the stuff I don't, I'll be the first to admit to tell you I don't know anything about that. You know, so it's like I'm going to express my opinion about things that I know about, you know, and it's like
and even that comes back to, like you said, asking questions. When someone expresses that to you, ask them why.
Right.
Why
does it bother you that I'm knowledgeable?
Or not even.
Maybe that was too aggressive.
So like to even start with like, why do you feel that way?
Mm-hmm.
Or what about the way I'm expressing is making you think that way?
Mm-hmm.
Genuinely, no judgment, just why? And then maybe someone will say, because you do this. And I'm like, and that's where I come back to like knowing yourself.
Right.
And you can say, well, no, I'm not actually doing that. And these are the reasons I'm doing and saying the things that I'm doing and saying. And that's my foundation. And those are my goals. And like, this is what I do. And then will be like, well, I didn't know that. Or then you can kind of unpack what they're probably most likely projecting onto you.
Right.
Also, there's another really cool analogy that one of my mentors told me. It's like the concept of crabs in a bucket. So like he says like society is crabs in a bucket, or even like elevating your consciousness or whatever is like crabs in a bucket. There's always, so like if one crab tries to get out, the other ones pull it down.
Yeah.
So none of them end up getting out of the bucket. And they don't know that. They just like, they're like, no, you always get pulled back down to the collective. And I just shared that recently with Madeline Hall. Shout out Buffalo Food Slut, I guess. No, like she's great. But yeah, like, cause she was telling me, she's like, dealing with haters is like so difficult. And I'm like, well, some people just hate because they don't know how to be supportive. They don't know how to see someone have success, or they get jealous, or I don't know. And that's for anyone, not this specific instance, but like, I think it's difficult for a lot of people to just like look for the good and like allow for the growth to happen, because they want to see something perfect happen,
right.
Or they don't know what success looks like, or and no one allows that space and that grace for that person to develop, to do their own thing and learn from their mistakes. And we can even get into like cancel culture with this,
for sure,
where like I think sometimes people are a little too quick to judge
absolutely
certain things.
Specifically in Madeline's case, like I've seen people, like I know people who have like, you know, talk shit and like, you know, hate on her or whatever, and I don't say anything, but I'm like, but I know her, you know what I mean? I grew up with her. I know exactly how she is, you know what I mean? And I know that she's not a bad person,
right?
You know? And I think she got very popular very fast, and you know, there are things that when you get to that level open up the door for people to criticize you at a level that you've never experienced before.
Right.
And you have to do some PR and some brand awareness type of stuff that like when you have that level to like know that, you know, being part of a community requires you to be a certain way and things like that. And and that all of that takes learning and, you know, to get there. And I think, you know, and on the other side of it, like the people who shit on her and hate on her, it's like, well, one, I mean, these people probably have things going on in their own lives that, and you got to be the target that day. And two, it's easy to criticize and, you know, easy to call out, and it's easier to call it out and shit on it than it is to pull somebody aside who's doing it and be like, hey, maybe you should try this, you know what I mean? Or something like that. Right. Like you have to give people the opportunity to grow and learn and try. You know?
Yeah, and especially like, again, that conversation about social media, it's like we don't know how to properly use social media.
Exactly, yeah.
No one does.
Right.
And
that's why I've resorted to just like treating all of it like a joke.
Yeah.
Because it's like, it might as well be, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and like enjoy what we have and like leave room for growth and like ask questions. It's like it's so simple. Like, I don't know, like everyone needs to go to therapy, everyone needs to ask more questions, everyone needs to get to know themselves, and like understand the difference between like self and other, and like not mix everything together. And I don't know, I think it's more simple than we
absolutely. And I will say, like, going on the topic of cancel culture, like I was fully a person that was like calling everybody out, canceling people, like, you know, getting on board with all of it fully. But when I think back on it, it's like, oh, that was a time in my life when I fucking hated myself and I didn't know who I was, and I was just getting behind causes just to get behind them because I thought it was the right thing to do. You know, and maybe for some of it was, you know, but and I think my whole thing is, when I look back, it's like my head was always in the right place when I was doing it. You know what I mean? Like, I think I go back on how I acted, and like, especially like in political arguments with people, when, you know, it's like maybe I acted a little rash, but it was like, but my heart was always in the right place, you know? Like the idea of canceling somebody, it's a knee-jerk reaction, whatever. But like where it comes from is like a real place. That's like somebody was hurt here, and it's like, but we need the flip side of that coin of we need to have growth and things like that. Like, dude, anybody that's going through people's like old tweets to like find shit, like fuck off. Like there's like that drives me nuts. Yeah. Like, because it's just like, dude, like anybody could have grown since then. Anybody, and it's going to be getting to a point, like right now, again, going to a point back to, we grew up with this. I go on my Facebook every day to go through the memories and see in 2009 what 14-year-old Aiden was posting, and it's like, so like some of it was like, I should be canceled for this. You know what I mean? But it's like, I also was a teenager. I didn't know any better, and like, like, I've learned a lot since then, and I don't say those things anymore, and like whatever, like
same. And like the growth you can see when you're like, who was that,
right?
But then
thank God I've gotten to this point. Thank God I don't act like that anymore.
And I think a lot of us, like, our journey is just kind of like, this is what's kind of like in my one mentor's books, is like, you come into this world with light, and you at some point forget who you are. I'm using air quotes. And then you go through this period of like darkness where like you experience trauma or forgetting of what your light is and what your purpose is. And then if you're lucky, you find your light again. And then the rest of your life is using that light and continuing to elevate yourself, and others. Because when you elevate yourself, you elevate others. And I think that's also like a huge lesson that I've learned is like, I think it's a Rumi quote where he says like, it's something like, I thought I was wise and I wanted to change the world, but now I'm wise and I'm changing myself.
Yeah.
So it's like,
and because of that, the world will change around you.
Yes. So
I don't know if that's the quote, but that seems like a good way to
essentially, yes. That if you elevate yourself, you elevate everything else.
And I mean, firsthand experience, I know that's true. You know what I mean? The idea, like going to college and being, when I talked about how that was the first time that I felt like I could be myself, because I got out of my home where I didn't feel like I had to live up to certain standards for people's approval, and I could just be fully myself. Found my light again, if you will. You know what I mean? Like that, and then came back to this place again, and darkness came again, spiraled around, and then had to work to find that light again. And every time I get back to that point, it you can tell that it, like when you elevate yourself, it does elevate the world around you. It's amazing. Yeah.
And then you find ways to continue to do it.
Right.
And sometimes things are temporary. Sometimes things like, I don't know. That's also something I've learned. It's like you can do things temporarily and like then walk away from it.
Totally.
Or like even at good, bad, indifferent, like you can just continue to change and develop and grow. And like we're not set in this like you have to like go to college, get a job, get benefit, like like you can there's so many different ways to do things. And actually you got me at an interesting time. Like I had like a craniosacral session yesterday, which is like rebalancing my nervous system. Then today I had acupuncture and a theta healing session, which theta healing is essentially a practitioner goes into a theta brainwave state, which is like a deep meditative state. And it's also kind of like where like psychic energy is as well. Well, the brainwave that you use to process psychic energy. And it's basically like psychic counseling. They like go into this like trance and they talk to you about what's in your energy field and stuff. That's a very basic version of it.
Sure.
But I was talking to my practitioner today, and I was thinking about going to school again, and I was like, it just doesn't feel right anymore. And I was talking to her about it, and she's like, well, you need school if you think you need it. If you don't think you need it, you'll find a way to find success.
Right.
But if there is even like an ounce in the back of your mind that is like,
this doesn't feel right.
Well, no. So like,
okay.
If there's even actually no Aiden. No, I'm just kidding. No, if there's like an ounce of like this, conditioning or like acceptance of something that's not actually in alignment with your own thoughts and beliefs, it's not, you're still going to have that like residual, like, I don't know how to explain it. So like if like I'm like, I feel like it's out of my system. School is out of my system.
Right.
I feel like I don't need it.
Sure.
I convinced myself that I did because based on like socially and society and
I gotcha.
standards,
Yeah.
like I have to do this in order to get this.
Right.
And now I'm at this
So maybe
point.
not that an ounce of it doesn't feel right, but an ounce that it doesn't feel necessary for what you think you need to achieve in life.
Yeah. And it's like, if like, yeah, it's just, it's weird because like it just doesn't connect with me. I'm like, that doesn't make sense to me anymore. I can do what I want to do now.
Right. 1,000%.
And I can make it happen now. Could I do that? Yeah. Do I need to? No. And that's kind of like, that in itself is also energy work because we attract the experiences that align with where we are and how we think and how we believe and how we feel. And I'm like, I don't feel connected to this.
Mm-hmm.
So why go do it? I'll figure it out with the things that I actually do connect with. And that's like totally opposite of the way that we're taught to be, is like we're taught to exist in these structures. We're taught to exist in
Right.
established patterns, but who's to say? Like, it's just kind of commonly accepted.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it's correct.
Right. I mean, it might work for some people.
It works
you know
for
what I
some
mean?
people,
And that's
of
what I
course.
find working in my like corporate job 9 to 5. I'm like, sometimes I'm like, how am I the only one that's like realizes this place is a scam? You know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
like realizing all this is bullshit. This is just not, this is serving no purpose. There's no reason for any of it. Like, this is not fulfilling at all. And I'm like, how are all of these people just fine with this? And I'm like, well, this is fine for a lot of people.
It worked.
Yeah.
And that's where it's like, it is consistent with someone's beliefs.
Right.
And it's consistent with someone's
Yeah.
thoughts and behaviors.
Yeah. And that's the thing I realized. I'm like, oh, maybe this job isn't bullshit. Maybe this job just isn't for me.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what it comes down to, is like, what do you connect to?
Yeah.
Because like you said, some people do connect to that. They want that kind of lifestyle. They believe they need that kind of lifestyle.
And me hating them for it is that I'm jealous that they're happy in what they do.
Well, it's just you connect differently.
Yeah.
And that's what I always encourage people to do, is to explore how you connect. And that's how you find meaning in life ultimately. Because like sometimes people do sometimes we have to do things that we don't want to do. It's
Right.
not like a perfect world where we can just like, I don't know, there's bills to be paid and like
Totally.
whatever.
Yeah. Some
And
things we have to surrender to.
Yes. But there is also, once you follow that connection, it all kind of goes into flow and makes sense. It may not always make sense and be perfect, but even within that is lessons for further connection and growth.
I love that.
So it's like we go through, I don't know, it ebbs and flows. Yeah. 'Cause like, I don't know, this woman that I just met, she like lost her business. She had a successful business, lost it, moved to Buffalo. She's the one that did the astrocartography thing. And now she's like, meets me and I'm like, bro, let's like fucking go. Like, like
there's no mistake or coincidence happening.
Yeah.
There.
And we had a conversation where she was like, I'm like at my wit's end. And I'm like, perfect. Like, let's be partners and like, let's
get you out of that. Yeah.
Let's get you out of that. And like, let's do something about that. And like, here's resources that I have for you and you have resources for me, and let's help each other.
Beautiful.
And like, we're here at this moment connecting, not by accident,
right?
But because we connect,
yeah,
and we have the same view, and we can use that to not only help ourselves but to help other people. And it's weird because like you can have like a stagnancy for like 6 months, but because you're doing what you're connected to, like what she's like, I'm not going to stop doing what I want to do,
right?
Because I'm connected to it.
Yeah,
it's just continuing on until you find that connection that makes it worth it.
Right, exactly. And those like mundane periods, like you need that.
Yes.
Because, or else the connections that you hit at the end is not going to feel as great. You know what I mean? Like,
not everything can be like an orgasmic experience.
Right. 1000%. Yeah. And that's all going back to the conversation about balance. You know what I mean? You need the dark to see the light.
Yeah. Yeah.
Et cetera, et cetera.
So all ebb and flow.
We've been talking for a long time. This might be the longest episode yet. So I'll say we should wrap this up, and we'll definitely do a part 2 because we can keep talking about this stuff for hours, and I love this shit.
I haven't even gotten to the angel channeler that I met.
All right, well, that
part 2.
We'll keep that. The angel channeler will be part 2.
Talk about angels, which
I love it.
Somehow exist, and I became a believer because I've experienced it.
All right, well, maybe you'll convert me into one. But yeah, no, this was great.
I feel like I'm on the next or what? No. Yeah, next, where they're like, so we've been on this date for 2 hours and 22 minutes.
Dude, I miss those old MTV shows.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, anything to take away from this episode, if you're still listening, all the power to you of all the things that you just took in. Be graceful with yourself was what I think was a really good point that we made, or that you made. Give yourself a little grace. Put your faith in the universe and in yourself, and lead with empathy on both sides of things. When someone does something bad or that you feel is bad, lead with empathy and try to help them get on the good path, instead of just writing them off.
Yeah, and to also explore what connects you to life.
And ask questions, and that's how you get there.
And ask questions, because if you feel resistance, ask a question. And then somehow there will be some sort of clarity,
Love it.
So,
David, thanks for coming on the I Am Your Friend podcast. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Aiden.